Dear listener, imagine the thrill of embarking on a journey through time where each step you take is a leap back into the dusty, slumbering chapters of history. Tonight we unfurl the tapestry of a particularly tumultuous era, the Crusades. As you cozy up in your sanctuary of rest, I wonder, where in this vast world are you listening from? Is the sun setting or rising for you? I invite you to share your corner of the world in the comments below. But first, let yourself settle. Perhaps adjust your pillow or cradle a warm drink, for there's no haste in this exploration of the past. Let your mind drift not to the hustle of today, but back to the medieval heart of Europe in the 11th century. Here life unfurls like a medieval tapestry, woven with the threads of feudal allegiances and the rhythmic chime of church bells. Each day was a battle against the elements, a dance with the harshness of the land, where the cold bit deep and hunger was an ever-present shadow. Yet in this world of toil, there existed a profound spiritual yearning, a quest for meaning that permeated every layer of society. The church, with its soaring spires and solemn rituals, stood as both the spiritual and temporal beacon, guiding the faithful through life's trials. Imagine the fervor, the passion, the collective heartbeat of a civilization where faith was not just belief, but the very essence of existence. From this sacred institution, a spark would soon ignite, setting the stage for an epic saga of faith conflict and the relentless pursuit of a divine cause. In the year 1095, the Grand Cathedral of Clermont, France, resonates with the fervent voice of Pope Urban II. Ascending the pulpit, his words ignite like a spark to the tinder of religious zeal, poised to engulf the world in the flames of holy war. He speaks with a fervor that grips the heart, painting a somber tableau of Jerusalem, the hallowed ground where Christ suffered in triumph, now languishing beneath the heavy yoke of Muslim dominion. Will you not rise, ye faithful of Christendom, to reclaim this sacred land? Urban implores, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. Will you not arm yourselves for the glory of God and the salvation of the holy city? The crowd, stirred by his call, erupts in a thunderous response. God wills it. Thus a new chapter unfurls in the annals of medieval history, one marked by the epic saga of the Crusades. Over the subsequent 2 centuries, this fervor propels wave upon wave of Christian warriors from Europe, each facing unimaginable trials on their pilgrimage towards Jerusalem. This era teems with tales of legendary heroes and nefarious villains, of grand battles and political machinations akin to those in a grand Game of Thrones. Yet beneath the glory and the valor lies a tapestry of immense human suffering, of religious fervor and cultural upheaval. Imagine the life of a humble peasant, stirred by the Pope's call, shouldering a cross and setting forth on a journey fraught with peril to a land unknown. Picture the lordly knights and clerics wrestling with the moral complexities and contradictions of their divine mission. And consider the Muslim inhabitants of the Holy Land caught in the seismic clash of civilizations. What did this tumultuous period truly entail for those who lived it? How did they perceive their roles in this grand, often tragic narrative? Tonight we delve deep into the heart of the Crusades, exploring the multifaceted and often sorrowful history that unfolded. So let your mind wander, your eyes closed, and be whisked away to a time where faith and sword danced a perilous waltz. In a world where the clash of swords echoed through the air, where chivalry and jihad danced in a deadly ballet, and where majestic cathedrals rose against the backdrop of blood-soaked sands, we find ourselves at the threshold of a monumental saga. Yet before we immerse ourselves in the visceral heart of our tale, let us pause and reflect upon the undercurrents that shaped this world-altering movement. The Crusades, after all, did not spring forth from nothingness. They were the culmination of centuries of intertwined religious fervor, political machinations, and social upheavals that had been simmering in both Europe and the Middle East. To grasp why such a diverse array of individuals, from monarchs and pontiffs to the humblest of soldiers, felt an irresistible call to bear the cross, one must step back and view the grand tapestry of history. By the twilight of the 11th century, European Christendom was in the throes of a profound metamorphosis. populations burgeoned, agriculture and trade flourished, and there was a palpable surge in spiritual and intellectual zeal. The church, already the most formidable institution in medieval society, was now flexing its muscles with unprecedented vigor. Reformist popes determined to purge corruption and heresy sought to extend their dominion over the secular world. Simultaneously, the feudal lords, restless and ambitious, yearned for new avenues to magnify their power and glory through conquest. Over in the Middle East, the once formidable Byzantine Empire, the Christian heir to Rome's grandeur, was grappling with its own existential crises. Besieged by external foes and riddled with internal discord, the empire watched helplessly as the Seljuk Turks, fierce warriors of Islam, encroached upon its territories in Anatolia, threatening the very heart of its existence. In this crucible of religious zeal, political turbulence and cultural frictions, Pope Urban II, with a voice that would echo through the annals of history, issued his call to arms in 1095 at Clermont. But what were the exact words that stirred the hearts of the assembled masses? How did his message resonate with those who heard it, igniting a fervor that would alter the course of history? According to the vivid and often chilling narratives of the time, Urban painted a harrowing tableau of the afflictions endured by Eastern Christians under Muslim dominion. He spun tales of excruciating torture, the cruel yoke of enslavement, and the sacrilegious defilement of sacred sanctuaries. Whether these accounts held the full measure of truth mattered little. What truly struck the hearts of Urban's listeners was the visceral emotional resonance of his words. With fiery rhetoric, the Pope branded the Muslims as barbaric adversaries of Christ, whose expulsion from the Holy Land was not just necessary but divinely ordained. Yet alongside this dire portrayal, Urban dangled a shimmering promise of celestial rewards for those who would bear the cross. Envision the jubilation, to have one's sins washed away, to be assured a seat in the heavenly court, to be celebrated as a warrior of the divine. This concoction of spiritual fervor, martial valor, and an almost apocalyptic urgency resonated deeply with the knights and nobles present. Raised in the noble tradition of chivalry, where bravery, honor, and devoutness reigned supreme, the opportunity to wield their martial prowess in the name of God was an irresistible summons. But the call to arms was not merely for the elite. Urban's impassioned plea also echoed in the hearts of the commoners across Europe. For those mired in the daily drudgery of poverty and oppression, the crusade was a beacon of hope, a thrilling adventure, a chance for spiritual rejuvenation, and perhaps a new beginning in the sacred lands. Oh, the irony that would soon unfold. The stark realities of the First Crusade would unveil a far more brutal and disheartening picture than any could have fathomed in that euphoric moment at the Clermont. Yet as the crowd roared in assent, stitching crosses onto their garments, the air was thick with the intoxicating belief that anything was within reach. The die had been cast, and Christendom stood on the precipice of a holy war, destined to etch its mark upon the annals of history for generations to come. Indeed, the journey to Jerusalem was one fraught with the noblest of intentions, yet it was also a path soaked in the blood, sweat, and tears of its crusaders. They would encounter trials beyond measure, traversing thousands of miles through the scorching deserts of Anatolia, confronting the formidable walls of the sacred city. Their passage would not only alter landscapes, but also the lives and cultures of those they met, leaving an indelible legacy both benevolent and baleful. From this crucible of a conflict would emerge new kingdoms, dynasties, and religious orders, yet the seeds of discord and cultural misunderstanding sown would resonate through the ages. As we delve into this sweeping saga of the medieval era, let us not forget that at its core, the Crusades were a tapestry woven from the dreams, fears, and imperfections of countless souls caught in history's relentless march. From the humble foot soldier to the mighty sultan, each had a role in this grand, often tragic play. So as you settle into slumber, dear listener, let your imagination roam back to that era of profound faith and fierce conflict, where the destiny of empires was forged in the clash of steel and the fire of conviction. Together we shall navigate the labyrinthine paths of this extraordinary tale, Remember, even amidst the bleakest times, the human spirit has always shone through finding ways to endure, to adapt, and to dream of brighter days. But for now, let the worries of our modern world slip away and allow yourself to be whisked back to the dawn of an age where faith and fury collided in epic proportions. Imagine the fervor that gripped the world when a pope's impassioned words ignited a firestorm altering history's trajectory in ways we are still unraveling. We are about to delve into the intricate tapestry of the Crusades, but first let us take measured steps into this saga, where every cobblestone and dusty path tells a tale of faith, ambition, and human spirit. Our narrative unfolds amidst the vibrant ports and pilgrimage routes of Europe, where a diverse throng assembles heeding Pope Urban II's rallying cry. They are a motley crew indeed, seasoned knights with scars of battle, eager young squires dreaming of glory, monks, cloaked in piety clerics, versed in the ways of the world, and peasants whose simple lives are about to be upended. Then there are the nobles whose hearts beat for adventure, wealth, or perhaps a fresh start in the land of legends and promises. What drives these souls? For some, it is a pure burning zeal for their faith. For others, the allure of adventure, riches, or escape from their mundane existence. Yet beneath these very motivations, there pulses a shared conviction, a belief in a holy mission to reclaim the sacred birthplace of their religion. As they embark on this daunting eastward pilgrimage, the Crusaders are blissfully unaware of the trials that loom like storm clouds on the horizon. Many lack the essentials for such an odyssey: proper provisions, military training, or even unified leadership. Others, consumed by pride and petty rivalries, are more intent on skirmishing with fellow Christians than confronting the infidel. Among them, the People's Crusade, led by the enigmatic Peter the Hermit, bursts forth in the spring of 1096. This unruly band, predominantly made up of untrained peasants and fervent zealots, rushes ahead of the main forces, their zeal outpacing their wisdom. In their haste for divine reward, they leave behind a path marred by chaos and tragedy, their first encounters turning against their own brethren in faith, the Jewish communities of the Rhine. Oh, the complexity of human nature. Here we stand at the dawn of an epic journey where every step taken is a step into the unknown, where the heart's desires clash with the harsh realities of the world. What tales of bravery and betrayal, of hope and despair, will these crusaders weave? In the heart of the Rhineland, a sinister wave of hatred sweeps through, targeting the Jewish communities. These innocent souls who have lived in peace now find themselves ensnared in a brutal campaign of forced conversion, expulsion, and mass murder. The air, once filled with the gentle murmur of daily life, now echoes with the cries of the persecuted. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, fall victim to this frenzied anti-Semitic violence, a dark mark that forever tarnishes the noble aspirations of the Crusader movement. But this is merely the prelude to the grand spectacle of the First Crusade. The stage is set for the arrival of Europe's grand lords and naiads, who have meticulously gathered their forces, their hearts set on the sacred journey to the Holy Land. Under the command of seasoned warriors like Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto, these armies march forth better prepared and more disciplined than the peasant bands that preceded them. Yet their path is fraught with trials that test their mettle and their faith. As they traverse the rugged landscapes of Europe and Anatolia, the Crusaders are met with scorching, sun-unforgiving terrain and relentless attacks from Turkish raiders. The journey becomes a crucible, a relentless test where thirst, hunger, and disease claim lives by the thousands. Ambush and skirmish further thin their ranks. How long can we endure this living nightmare? One might wonder as despair creeps into their weary bones. Yet, driven by an unshakable belief that they are fulfilling a divine mandate, the Crusaders persist. Their resolve, mixed with brutality and religious fervor, propels them forward. By the time they reach the formidable walls of Antioch in the autumn of 1097, they are shadows of their former selves, battle-worn, ragged, and hanging by a thread of life. Nevertheless, in this weakened state, they display a resilience that belies their condition. With a siege that combines brute force and strategic cunning, they assault the city for nearly 8 months. Siege engines pound the ancient walls while in the streets, fierce hand-to-hand combat unfolds with the Muslim defenders. Through it all, the Crusaders fend off external attacks, their spirits indomitable, their mission clear. Amidst the verdant fields and rolling hills of the surrounding countryside, the siege of Antioch unfolds a grueling, bloody spectacle that stretches human endurance to its very limits. This ordeal not only tests the physical strength of the Crusaders, but also reveals the deep fissures within their camp. Rivalries and resentments, long smoldering beneath the surface, erupt into open conflict as various lords and factions vie for dominance and influence. At times, one could mistake the Crusaders' internal strife for their actual war against the enemy. Yet through a blend of perseverance, treachery, and sheer inexplicable fortune, the Crusaders finally managed to breach the formidable walls of Antioch. They surge into the city like a torrent, leaving in their wake a legacy of violence and destruction that would echo through the annals of infamy. The streets of Antioch become rivers of blood as both Muslims and Christians fall under the sword. It is a tableau of unimaginable horror, the chilling testament to the abyss into which humanity can descend in pursuit of divine favor and earthly glory. Even as the Crusaders bask in the bitter triumph of their victory, a new, even more formidable challenge looms on the horizon. No sooner had they claimed Antioch than they find themselves ensnared, besieged by a colossal Muslim army led by the formidable Kurboga of Mosul. Outnumbered, isolated from supplies, the Crusaders face what seems to be their inevitable slow demise. But in this darkest hour, when all hope seems lost, a miracle unfolds. According to legend, a humble peasant named Peter Bartholomew in a vision is visited by St. Andrew, who reveals the location of the Holy Lance, the spear that once pierced the side of Christ. After days of fervent searching and amidst swirling controversy, the lance is unearthed from beneath the altar of St. Peter's Cathedral. Its discovery sends a wave of fervor through the Crusader ranks, galvanizing them with the undeniable sign of divine favor. Emboldened, they rally once more. On that fateful day of June 28, 1098, with hearts heavy and spirits flagging, the Crusaders marched out from the city gates to confront Kurboga's formidable army. High above the sacred relic, the Holy Lance was borne aloft by the venerable papal Leotimar of Louis, a symbol of divine hope amidst their direst hour. What ensued was nothing short of miraculous, a clash etched in the annals of history where the beleaguered Franks, outnumbered and weary, managed to scatter the Turks into chaos, sending them fleeing in disarray. A victory so stunning it solidified the Crusaders' hold over Antioch, paving the way for their ultimate quest towards Jerusalem. Yet this triumph came at a steep price. Disease and hunger gnawed at the Christian ranks, reducing them to mere specters of their once formidable selves. By the time spring of 1099 dawned, and they embarked on the final stretch of their arduous journey, the Crusaders were but a ragged band of survivors, driven more by desperation than by faith or chivalry. As they trudged along the coast of Palestine, a formidable barrier loomed before them, the heavily fortified city of Jerusalem, the prize that had spurred their long and bloody campaign. For weeks, they besieged this city of dreams and nightmares, hurling stones with catapults, ramming the walls with battering rams while repelling the fierce counterattacks of the Muslim defenders. It was a struggle that tested the very fibers of their endurance. Many fell in battle or succumbed to the cruel twin foes of thirst and disease. But through sheer grit, through the unyielding determination of their will, the Franks breached the walls on that scorching July 15th, 1099, and surged into the city in a maelstrom of violence and destruction. What followed was a dark chapter, one where the victorious Christians unleashed a torrent of slaughter and pillage, a grim testament to the brutal reality of their quest. In this land where the echoes of war and the whispers of peace intertwine, a chapter of history unfolds that will forever stain the tapestry of time with the blood of both Muslims and Jews. In the sacred streets of the holy city, their lives are brutally extinguished, their bodies amassed like fallen leaves, and their life blood courses through the hallowed grounds, painting a grim tableau of horror. What depravity resides in the hearts of men that they could commit such savagery. Yet amidst this tempest of violence, there are fleeting moments when the veil between heaven and earth seems to thin. As the Crusaders bow in reverence before the Holy Sepulchre, the tomb where Christ himself lay, they are enveloped by an overwhelming sense of divine connection. Their hearts swell with awe and their spirits soar, as if every hardship endured was but a prelude to this singular moment of celestial grace. Is this not what we sought? They might wonder their souls alight with a fervor that defies the surrounding chaos. In the wake of this conquest, the Crusaders lay the foundations of their dominion over the Holy Land, a patchwork of feudal states soon to be known as Outre-mer, the land beyond the sea. This existence is fraught with peril, a delicate balance of power, intrigue, and the clash of civilizations. For the Muslim inhabitants, the Crusader presence is a bitter draught, a symbol of their vulnerability and shame. Many are compelled to abandon their homes, coerced into Christianity, while others endure a life shadowed by the uneasy presence of their new rulers. Yet within this crucible of conflict, there are also seeds of cultural exchange. In the vibrant ports and bustling markets of the Levant, Franks and Muslims engage in commerce, their interactions weaving a complex tapestry of coexistence. In the grand halls of Crusader castles, knights and noblewomen converse with Arab poets and scholars, creating a world where the boundaries between ally and adversary, the sacred and the secular, blur into a fascinating mosaic of human endeavor. How does one navigate such a world where the lines of division are so often crossed and recrossed? The tides of history had turned sweeping over the once mighty estates of the Crusades, now beleaguered on every front. The formidable fortresses which once stood proudly across the sacred landscapes of the Holy Land now seem like isolated bastions in an ever-encroaching ocean of Muslim opposition. Gone were the days of promised glory and opulence that the early crusading orators had so fervently extolled. Instead, for those who called these outposts home, daily existence had become a relentless ordeal of scorching, sun-scant provisions and the ever-looming shadow of enemy incursions. Yet amidst this adversity, there lingered a resilient few who held fast to the dream that had beckoned countless souls to these distant shores. The dream of forging a new existence, treading the hallowed paths once walked by Christ and his apostles. These were the staunch, the devout, the unyielding, who clung with all their might to this arid, contested sliver of holy soil. Could one truly fault them for their stubbornness? After all, generations of crusaders before them had laid down everything, wealth, prestige, their very lives to wrest these lands from Muslim dominion. To abandon it now would be to declare their sacrifices meaningless, to concede that their endeavors had been in vain. And so they persisted. Frankish lords and ladies, knights and clergy, artisans and tillers of the soil all rose each dawn to the distant call of the muezzin, echoing from the minarets of nearby Muslim villages. They bartered in markets redolent with the sense of exotic spices and manned walls bleached by the fierce Mediterranean sun. Under the cover of night, they lay in uneasy slumber, their rest disturbed by visions of the enemy at their gates. Their life was precarious, yes, but imbued with a peculiar enchantment. In the winding streets of Jerusalem, Acre, Tripoli, and Tyre, whispers of a bygone era still danced, a testament to their enduring spirit and the haunting beauty of their struggle. A symphony of languages filled the air. French and Italian, Arabic and Greek, Armenian and Syriac, each note harmoniously blending into the next. What were once formidable cultural walls, rigid and unyielding, began to crumble under the relentless tides of trade and diplomacy. Imagine the Crusaders marrying into local Christian families, their children growing up as linguistic bridges between the East and West. Their attire, a fusion of flowing robes and pointed helmets, became a testament to their unique existence, embracing the styles of their Muslim adversaries while holding fast to their Catholic beliefs. This cultural melting pot gave birth to an art and architecture that was a breathtaking amalgamation of European and Islamic elements, a beauty that was as unique as it was fragile. Yet beneath this veneer of cosmopolitanism, the sands of the Crusader states shifted uneasily. The Muslim princes, once divided, had now found unity under the banner of charismatic leaders who vowed to cast the Franks back into the sea. Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, emerged as a beacon of this new resolve. Born to a Kurdish family of renown, he ascended through the ranks of the Fatimid Caliphate, eventually seizing power with audacious flair. A master of military strategy and political cunning, his soul was aflame with the fervent desire to reclaim Jerusalem for Islam. As Saladin's power grew, the Crusaders felt the tremors of change. They knew their grip on the Holy Land was as tenuous as the discord among their foes. Each year, this discord lessened, and with it the foreboding sense of an imminent reckoning. Despite the looming threat, life in the Crusader states continued with its customary rhythm. Nobles plotted and vied for power in the courts of Jerusalem and Cyprus, while the military orders, the Templars, Hospitallers, and Teutonic Knights honed their skills, preparing for the inevitable clash. Their hearts echoed with the question, how long could their fragile peace last? As they devoted themselves to the care of the sick and the destitute, the common folk, the merchants, artisans, tillers of the soil, and herders struggled to carve out a meager existence in this merciless land. They exchanged vows, brought new life into the world, reveled in festivals, and grieved their losses, all the while shadowed by the knowledge that their hard-won fortunes could be obliterated in a heartbeat by the whims of politics or the surge of warfare. This existence teetered on the edge of the divine and the mundane, the ephemeral and the everlasting. In these Crusader states, one might find oneself kneeling in prayer at dawn, bargaining for the finest silks and spices as the day matured, and then standing sentinel on the fortress walls throughout the night, eyes straining into the abyss for any hint of an approaching foe. Is it any wonder that even today, long after the last Frankish stronghold has vanished beneath the waves, the era of the Crusades still grips our collective psyche with such fervor? It was an epic marked by both immense savagery and heroic valor, where pious zeal intersected with raw greed, where civilizations collided, yet also found moments of unexpected cultural communion. Despite its violence, there is an allure to this period in human history, a feeling that through the clash of Crusaders and Saracens, profound truths were being forged about the interplay of East and West Christianity and Islam, the ancient order versus the emerging new. Yet for those who endured the Crusades, such grand reflections were probably the furthest from their thoughts. They were consumed with survival, nurturing a sparse yield from unforgiving land, warding off illness and starvation, maintaining their blade's edge and their faith's firmness against an unrelenting adversary. It was a life of hardship, a life of brutality, a life where every breath was a testament to resilience. In a world where every breath was a testament to endurance, life in the Crusader states was nothing short of a relentless odyssey. Yet amidst the trials, there were fleeting moments of transcendence that pierced the fabric of their existence. Imagine the overwhelming beauty of a Gothic cathedral, its spires reaching toward the heavens, or the heart-pounding rush as steel clashed in the fervor of battle. Picture the serene calm washing over you as a prayer escapes your lips in the soft glow of a candlelit chapel. Here lay the essence of their lives, a tapestry woven from paradoxes, the sacred intertwined with the profane, the sublime brushing against the squalid. This was a realm of sharp contrasts and uneasy alliances, where the Crusades' lofty ideals frequently collided with the gritty truths of human nature. As Saladin's influence swelled and the Muslim world rallied, these contradictions grew ever more pronounced. The final confrontation loomed on the horizon, and the Franks of Outremer were soon to face the ultimate examination of their faith and resilience. But let's set that tale aside for another day. For now, let us linger with these crusaders and settlers, these brave souls who staked everything to forge a new existence under the dual shadows of the cross and the crescent. Yes, they were flawed, driven by both greed and ambition, alongside their piety and zeal. Yet there is an undeniable nobility in their relentless spirit, their refusal to abandon the dream that beckoned them to this distant corner of the earth. In an era marked by turmoil and uncertainty, they held fast to their beliefs and their purpose, with a fierce determination that still centuries later stirs a reluctant admiration. So let us take a moment to honor them, these knights and settlers whose stories whisper through the annals of time, reminding us of the enduring human spirit's capacity for both folly and greatness. Oh, the heartrending tales of those valiant souls, the ladies, the priests, the pilgrims, the farmers, and the artisans. They lived, loved, fought, and perished under the unforgiving sun of the Holy Land. Their world so alien to ours, yet their essence, their very humanity resonates with us still. Can we not in their struggles and sacrifices, their fleeting triumphs and poignant failures glimpse the threads of our own shared human spirit? As Richard the Lionheart's forces embarked on their monumental journey across the Mediterranean, a whirlwind of anticipation and dread must have churned within them. The voyage itself was an odyssey of endurance, a logistical labyrinth where food and water had to be stretched over countless days at sea. Horses vital for their campaign were packed into the dark, stifling holds of ships standing amidst their own waste. Many of these noble creatures, and indeed a considerable number of men, fell victim to disease or starvation before even setting foot on the sacred soil of the Holy Land. Those who survived this initial trial faced a grueling march through scorching deserts and over rugged mountains, a trek that often felt more like a death march than a holy quest. The knights encased in their armor must have felt the sun's brutal caress through their metal, and patting each step a testament to their resolve. Their journey was punctuated by skirmishes with Saladin's elusive forces. The Sultan's mounted archers, swift as the wind would swoop in, unleash a storm of arrows and then vanish before the knights could muster a counterattack. This hit-and-run warfare was maddening, stripping away the valor of direct confrontation that the Crusaders so cherished. Yet Richard, ever the cunning commander, adapted his strategies to this foreign terrain. At the Battle of Arsuf in 1191, he orchestrated a breathtaking charge that not only scattered but decimated the harassing forces, showcasing the ingenuity and bravery of his leadership. The enemy cavalry, taken aback by the sheer speed and ferocity of the unexpected onslaught, found themselves scattered as Saladin's forces were driven into a frantic retreat. This left Richard in command of the battleground and the road leading northward to Jaffa. The Lionheart, undeterred, pressed onward, reclaiming pivotal Crusader fortresses along the Palestinian coast. With his disciplined troops and strategic genius, Richard advanced to the very doorstep of Jerusalem itself. But alas, the dwindling provisions, the ever-mounting toll of casualties, and the rising tide of discontent among his war-weary soldiers whispered a harsh truth. Jerusalem for now was beyond their grasp. As winter loomed and his men yearned for the comforts of home, Richard, with a heavy heart, consented to a 3-year truce with Saladin. What a bitter draft for the proud king to swallow. He had triumphed on numerous battlefields, breathed new life into the kingdom of Jerusalem, yet the ultimate prize, the holiest city in Christendom, remained just beyond his fingertips. Sailing back to Europe, Richard's mind must have wrestled with the inconclusive fruits of his labors. Despite the rivers of blood and mountains of treasure expended, the Holy Land's fundamental dynamics remained unaltered. The kingdom of Jerusalem teetered on the brink, encircled by a united Muslim front led by a formidable adversary. In truth, Richard's crusades signaled not just a pause, but perhaps the beginning of the end for the Crusader states. Though they would persist for another century, their hold on the Levant grew increasingly tenuous. Muslim rulers, such as the Mamluks of Egypt, methodically eroded Crusader territories, and no significant European crusades emerged to reinforce them. The fervor for these distant, costly wars diminished as Europe's political landscape grew more intricate. For those living within the Crusader states, this was a constant shadow of existential dread. Their Christian strongholds could crumble at any moment, leaving them to ponder, would the next dawn bring salvation or doom? Imagine the sheer dread that enveloped the Crusaders as they faced the relentless onslaught of Muslim forces, their camps a mere stone's throw away. The very air was thick with the palpable fear of siege starvation and the shadow of slaughter. Can we even fathom such an existence where every breath is tinged with the terror of annihilation? Perhaps the closest modern echo might be the chilling atmosphere of West Berlin during the Cold War's darkest hours, with the Red Army lurking just beyond the city's edge. Yet this comparison barely scratches the surface of the Crusaders' plight, the dire fate that awaited should their defenses crumble. In this crucible of conflict, the Franks of Outremer forged a unique cultural mosaic. They absorbed local customs and donned attire that would render them almost alien to their Western European kin. Marriages between Crusaders and locals were not uncommon, birthing a new generation that danced between two worlds. Yet this cultural dance was fraught with tension. The Crusades' core mission to secure Christian dominion over Muslim lands fostered deep-seated resentment among the conquered. Peace was a fragile veneer always on the brink of shattering. The military orders, like the Knights Templar and Knights Hospitaller, epitomized this tension. Charged with safeguarding Christian pilgrims in battling the faith's adversaries, they melded amongst devotion with a warrior's ferocity. These knights were the cutting edge of the Crusader force, the unyielding adversaries of Islam. But the life of constant vigilance exacted a profound toll. Governed by stringent rules, their existence was a relentless cycle of prayer and martial training. Forbidden from matrimony or personal wealth, their every waking moment was dedicated to the Holy Land's defense. What kind of life is this, one might wonder, where the heart beats not for love or land, but for the relentless call to arms? Amidst the opulence of their aesthetic pursuits, the military orders flourished, their coffers swelling with the generous bequests and donations of devout Europeans. They accumulated vast swaths of land delved into the realms of finance and commerce, and thus became not only spiritually but also materially mighty. With their newfound wealth, they erected grand fortresses, monuments of might, like the Templar stronghold of Tortosa and the Hospitaller castle Crac des Chevaliers. These structures, more than mere stone and mortar, were the epicenters of the Crusader estates, the very sinews that tethered the Frankish influence to the lands they sought to dominate. Yet for all their grandeur, these fortresses stood as poignant symbols of the Latin East's inherent vulnerability. No matter how thick the walls or how valiant the knights within these bastions were, but solitary islands surrounded by the vast Muslim sea, this precarious existence teetering on the edge of a knife permeated every breath of life in Outremer. It whispered in the fervent prayers of monks and nuns beseeching divine protection. It echoed in the terse exchanges of knights patrolling the pilgrimage routes, their eyes ever vigilant against threats lurking on the horizon. It lingered in the furtive glances and guarded whispers of the native Christians and Muslims living under the Crusader yoke, each moment fraught with uncertainty about their fate in the future. Over time, this pervasive anxiety wove itself into the very essence of the Crusader states, influencing their culture, politics, and spirituality. It was an omnipresent undercurrent, a constant vibration that tinted every decision, every interaction. Even during times of apparent peace and stability, the shadow of potential downfall loomed large, always at the back of every mind. This, perhaps more than any other factor, rendered life in the Latin East a psychological ordeal. It wasn't just the physical peril, but the relentless mental strain, the ever-present dread of collapse that truly defined the Crusader experience. Could one ever truly find peace in a land where peace was but an illusion, a fleeting moment before the next storm? Imagine, if you will, the ceaseless turmoil that must have gnawed at the very souls of those living in the Crusader states. It wasn't just the physical perils, the ferocious clashes, the relentless sieges, or the ravaging diseases. No, it was something far more insidious, a deep-seated, ever-present dread that permeated every waking moment. Picture the bone-deep realization, the chilling understanding that all you cherished, your home, your loved ones, could vanish in the blink of an eye, swept away by forces you could neither predict nor control. For the Crusaders and their heirs, this realization must have been an unrelenting burden, a weight that pressed down upon their shoulders with each step they took through their daily lives. How can we, ensconced in the safety and comfort of our modern era, truly fathom such a life? Imagine the constant gnawing fear, the sword of Damocles perpetually poised above your head. Now envision enduring this fear, not for days or months, but for years, for decades. Picture the struggle to forge a semblance of normalcy, to raise a family, to find a sliver of joy amidst the chaos, all while knowing that at any moment, the fragile thread of peace could snap, sending everything crashing down. This was the stark reality for the denizens of Outremer, the psychological toll of existing on the front lines of a holy war. Life in these embattled realms was not merely challenging, it was profoundly exhausting in ways that are difficult to fully appreciate from our distant vantage point in history. As we trace the grand arcs of events, the battles, the treaties, the ebbs and flows of history, it's all too easy to overlook this intimate human dimension, the daily lived experience of those who called these contested lands home. Yet this aspect of their lives is not just a footnote. It is a crucial thread in the tapestry of history that we must remember and with which we must reckon. Because at its core, isn't history about understanding the human experience? The tapestry of history. It's not just the grand names and pivotal dates that weave this intricate fabric, but the countless ordinary souls who breathed, toiled, and passed in times so alien to our own. To truly grasp the essence of the past, we must endeavor to see the world as they saw it, to touch the earth as they did to breathe their air. When we fully immerse ourselves in the reality of life during the Crusades, a stark realization dawns upon us. Life was harsh in ways that strain our modern comprehension, in ways that would fracture our contemporary spirit. Yet they endured generations upon generations, faced adversities that would have crushed us, building lives and identities in the relentless forge of conflict. They existed in the precarious space between the hammer of the West and the anvil of the East. Their tale is a powerful narrative of resilience against a backdrop of unyielding adversity. It stands as a testament to humanity's incredible capacity to adapt, to survive, to somehow continue even under the most grueling conditions. While we might not envy their lot, we can only stand in awe of their fortitude. So let us recline and let our thoughts wander through this tumultuous chapter of human history, and let's not forget the individuals who lived it. Consider the Crusader knights, the Muslim warriors, the pilgrims, the peasants, all swept up in the maelstrom of holy war. Their lives were hard-shaped by forces beyond their control, tossed about by the winds of religious zeal and political ambition. But amidst this, there were moments of grace, of human connection, of small victories and quiet joys. Their existence, though fraught with peril, was not devoid of beauty or humanity. Reflect then on their struggles and their small yet profound victories. Let their story inspire us, remind us of what it means to be human in the face of overwhelming odds. How can we not honor their memory, their resilience, their undying spirit? As the night deepens and our eyes grow heavy, let us cherish the moments that pierce through the gloom of our darkest hours. Even in times of great upheaval, there are always sparks of light, beacons of hope that guide us forward. This is the enduring message from the Crusades, a lesson that reverberates through the ages. Close your eyes now and let the echoes of history envelop you. Envision the clatter of armor, the thunderous gallop of war horses, the quiet whispers of prayers, and the fierce ring of steel meeting steel. Yet amidst these sounds of conflict, do not forget the gentle laughter of children at play, the warmth of a fire on a frigid evening, the deep, soothing peace of a well-deserved respite. These are the vibrant threads that weave the tapestry of human existence in all its intricate and colorful patterns. And as sleep claims us, let us find comfort in the assurance that regardless of how impenetrable the night or how uncertain the new day, these threads persist, knitting us into the vast, ever-evolving saga of our collective history. The Crusades, with their complex and often bloody legacy, have left an indelible mark that continues to resonate into our modern era. The tumultuous clash of religions, cultures, and empires in the Holy Land not only reshaped the medieval landscape, but also set the stage for centuries to follow. While the grand narratives often focus on the deeds of knights and monarchs, it was the common folk who endured the most severe trials and tribulations. Life within the Crusader states carved out by the conquering Christian forces was precarious and fraught with peril. Following the brutal sacking of Jerusalem in 1099, where Crusaders unleashed a massacre upon the city's Muslim and Jewish residents, a tense and fragile coexistence emerged. Here, European settlers and local inhabitants navigated a landscape shadowed by the specters of past violence, striving to find peace in a land so recently torn by war. The Crusaders established four principal states, each a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of relentless adversity. In the heart of the Mediterranean's eastern embrace, the county of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, the county of Tripoli, and above all, the Kingdom of Jerusalem stood as bastions of Latin Christendom. These outposts, surrounded by the often hostile gaze of Muslim powers, clung to existence with a tenacity born of desperation and divine fervor. For those crusaders who chose to settle in these lands, life was not a tapestry of glory, but a relentless battle against warfare, political machinations, and the ever-looming shadows of death and disease. Oh, how lofty were their dreams when they first set foot on this holy ground. Visions of religious grandeur and the allure of new fiefdoms in the east beckoned them. Yet reality bit back with the sharpness of a Saracen sword. These early Crusader states were a patchwork of feudal territories bound loosely under the Jerusalemite ruler's command. The title of ruler first graced Godfrey of Bouillon, who in his humility chose the title Defender of the Holy Sepulchre over king. But upon his demise in 1100, his brother Baldwin of Boulogne discarded such humility, crowning himself King Baldwin III of Jerusalem. Under his rule and those of his successors, the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem began to stretch its sinews, slowly enveloping the territories of Palestine. The port city of Acre became the kingdom's lifeline, a vital artery through which flowed a constant stream of fresh crusaders, pilgrims, and essential supplies, breathing life into the fledgling state. Yet despite these reinforcements, the Crusaders remained but a sliver in the vast mosaic of the region, vastly outnumbered by the native Muslim, Jewish, and Eastern Christian inhabitants. Out of sheer necessity, an uneasy dance of coexistence and compromise began. The Crusaders, in their quest to maintain their realms, leaned heavily on the local populace for manpower and expertise. This cultural melting pot simmered with potential, yet it was also a cauldron of resentments, misunderstandings, and the ever-present danger of erupting into violence. How fragile was this peace built on the shaky ground of conquest and compromise? In the heart of the Crusader kingdoms, where knights and nobles held sway, life pulsed with the rhythm of martial pursuits. Clashes with neighboring Muslim powers were as common as the sun rising each morning, the Crusaders' knights encased in their heavy armor, often becoming a formidable force on the battlefield. Yet when the din of war subsided, these warrior elites found solace within the grand sprawling castles that dotted the rugged landscapes. Here, amidst the echoing halls, they honed their combat skills, indulged in the chase of wild game, feasted heartily, and engaged in the intricate dance of politics, a society still ensnared by the feudal traditions of distant Europe, where one's birthright and skill in arms were paramount. Consider Baldwin II, a towering figure who reigned over Jerusalem from 1118 to 1131, a man whose life was a testament to the Crusader spirit. A veteran of the First Crusade, his rule was marked by ceaseless conflict with the Seljuk Turks and the Fatimids of Egypt. His capture in 1123 by the Turks plunged the kingdom into turmoil. His year-long imprisonment, a stark reminder of how precarious their hold was on this foreign land. Only through the payment of a substantial ransom was he freed, underscoring the fragile balance of power in which they existed. Perched on this knife edge of survival, the Crusader states depended heavily on a network of formidable castles and fortified cities, their bulwarks against the shifting tides of regional politics. Among these Croix de Chevalier stood preeminent a colossal fortress perched on a Syrian hilltop, serving as the nerve center for the Knights Hospitaller. This citadel, rising majestically from the plains, was not merely a fortress, but a symbol of crusader might, its walls and complex defenses capable of housing up to 2,000 souls, a beacon of hope and a bulwark against encroaching enemies. Ah, what tales these stones could tell of valor, of despair, and of unyielding resolve. Within the fortress, men constructed storerooms and systems resilient against the relentless sieges. Spartan and martial was life within the castle, where each day unfurled in drills, patrols, and constant readiness for battle. Yet for the ordinary soldiers and the common folk living under the Crusaders' shadow, the struggle for mere survival was fraught with peril. The land itself seemed to conspire against them, with drought and famine lurking in every corner, and the ever-shifting battle lines razing crops and livestock to the ground. Disease, too, was an insidious foe, with dysentery, typhoid, and myriad other maladies sweeping through the congested cities and military encampments like a merciless reaper. Despite these tribulations, the Crusader states held an even flourishing momentarily. The pulse of commerce beat strongly in the key ports of Acre, Tyre, and Jaffa, which served as vital arteries connecting Europe to the markets of the East. Here, Italian merchant republics like Genoa and Venice planted their lucrative roots, and alongside the mosques and synagogues of the local populace, grand churches and opulent palaces rose like beacons of prosperity. Yet this fragile balance was ever on the brink, shadowed by the looming threat of warfare. This peril took shape in Saladin, the Kurdish Muslim leader, who in the 1270s ascended to power in Egypt and Syria. A master of both military strategy and political acumen, Saladin unified the disparate Muslim factions beneath his banner, his gaze fixed upon the Crusader realms. The stage was thus set for a colossal confrontation, not merely of arms, but of faiths threatening to upend the very foundations of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. For the common people ensnared in this vortex, the prospect was bleak. Nothing but the renewal of suffering, hardship, and death that had been the hallmark of the Crusades since their inception. The dream of Jerusalem, that radiant city on a hill, which had beckoned so many to this perilous march eastward, shimmered as a mirage, ever elusive, ever stained with blood. As the dawn of the 13th century broke, the Crusader states teetered on the edge of oblivion. The Muslim world, once a mosaic of squabbling fiefdoms, now rallied under the iron fists of leaders like the Ayyubid Sultan al-Adil. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, the very soul of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land, had been whittled down to a slender band of land hugging the Mediterranean coast. Its sacred heart, the holy city of Jerusalem, had been wrested from Christian control by Saladin's forces long ago and remained securely under Muslim dominion. Imagine the life of those Europeans in Outremer, a life fraught with peril. Enemies encircled them, with the specter of invasion ever looming, a constant reminder of their vulnerable existence. The castles and fortified cities that peppered the landscape were not merely emblems of Crusader might. They were fortresses of survival. Within these bastions, daily existence was molded by the stark reality of being a Christian minority in a sea of Islam. The Crusaders, a motley crew from every corner of Europe, were bound by their faith in a fierce resolve to protect the Holy Land. From the Norman knights of England and France to the Germanic warriors of the Holy Roman Empire, they stood as one. Yet beneath this unity, tension seethed. Rivalries among different Crusader factions between the military orders, like the Templars and Hospitallers, and even among the states themselves, threatened to unravel their shared purpose. In cities like Acre or Tyre, everyday life was a tapestry of the known and the alien. Narrow streets alive with a blend of European-style churches and bustling Middle Eastern bazaars presented a vivid cultural mosaic. The peal of church bells interwove with the muezzin's call to prayer, while the air was rich with the aroma of spices and incense. What a spectacle it must have been, this vibrant clash of worlds each day, a testament to the resilience and the complexity of human endeavor in such trying times. Ah, what a tale of tension and transformation. The landscape beyond the city walls was a tapestry of fortified hamlets and manor houses where Crusader lords diligently watched over the cultivation of wheat, barley, and other life-giving crops. Imagine the roads teeming with pilgrims from Europe, their hearts set on the Holy Land, their spirits buoyed by faith yet shadowed by the perils of the journey. And there alongside these travelers, bands of heavily armored crusader knights patrolled the borders ever vigilant, ready to leap into battle at a moment's notice. Despite the undercurrent of danger, there were moments when the air seemed to hold its breath, times of uneasy peace and even cooperation. Trade like a silent river flowed between the cities of Outremer and the bustling metropolises of the Muslim world, such as Cairo and Damascus. Crusader lords in their strategic wisdom sometimes forged alliances with Muslim rulers against common threats. Oh, the cultural exchanges that flourished. European scholars pored over Arabic texts, their minds expanding with each page turned, while Muslim artisans with deft hands crafted exquisite goods for their crusader patrons. Yet these moments of détente were but fleeting whispers in the storm of history. The Crusaders, after all, were seen as foreign invaders on Muslim soil, a fact that bred deep-seated resentment and hostility. As the 13th century unfolded, this simmering cauldron of tension would erupt into renewed conflict, a fierce struggle that would ultimately dictate the destiny of the Crusader states. For the Europeans who had made Outremer their home, the end of the Crusader era loomed like a dark cloud. Many would flee back to Europe, leaving behind the castles and cities where they had woven their lives. Others, with a mix of courage and desperation, chose to remain, facing a future as uncertain as the shifting sands. But all of them, each and every one, bore the indelible mark of having lived on the very edge of the Crusades, a legacy that would echo through the quarters of history long after the last Crusader kingdom had fallen. As the 13th century unfurled its tapestry of turmoil, the Crusader states found themselves ensnared between the relentless forces of the Mamluks and the Mongols. The Mamluks, these formidable warriors, once slaves, had seized Egypt and Syria with an iron grip, their hearts ablaze with a fierce devotion to Islam. To them, the Crusaders were not merely invaders, but a blasphemous affront that demanded eradication. Meanwhile, from the east, a storm of another kind brewed. The Mongols, under the shadow of Genghis Khan and his heirs, had woven an empire of unparalleled vastness, stretching from the serene landscapes of Korea to the rugged plains of Hungary. By the 1250s, these nomadic warriors descended upon the Middle East like a whirlwind ravaging Baghdad and threatening to engulf the region entirely. Caught in this tempest, the Crusader states faced an existential quandary. Were the Mongols allies or adversaries? Some saw in them a potential savior, a force mighty enough to shatter the Muslim dominion and restore Christian sovereignty over the Holy Land. Envoys journeyed to the Mongol courts, whispers of alliances filled the air, yet the Mongols proved as capricious as the winds. Their allegiance was to their own empire, not to the cause of the Crusades. They would just as readily plunder Christian cities as Muslim ones, leaving the Crusaders to face the Mamluks alone. The decline of the Crusader states was a poignant, slow unraveling. One by one, their grand fortresses and vibrant cities succumbed to the Mamluk onslaught. Antioch, once a beacon of Crusader strength, fell in 1268. The formidable Croix des Chevaliers, the very heart of the Knights Hospitaller, was breached in 1271. In Acre, the last bastion of Crusader, might held out until 1291, its fall marking the somber end of an era. What hope could they have held against such relentless foes? The Crusaders, once so mighty, now stood on the precipice of oblivion, their dreams of a Christian Holy Land fading into the annals of history. In the waning days of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land, a palpable sense of desperation and despair gripped the hearts of those who called this land home. The once mighty Crusader knights, who had once epitomized valor and strength, were now mere shadows of their former selves, reduced to desperate bands huddled in their final fortresses. The grand fortresses, which had once stood as symbols of invincibility, now loomed like tombs, besieged and isolated, surrounded by the relentless advance of the Mamluks. As the Mamluk forces tightened their grip, chaos ensued. The air was thick with the cries of the terrified as civilians, in a frantic bid for survival, sought shelter within the beleaguered city walls. Inside, the last of the Crusader defenders steeled themselves for what they knew would be a final desperate stand. In Acre, as the enemy breached the fortifications, pandemonium erupted. There was a frenzied rush to the sea, where ships overloaded with desperate souls strained under the weight of human cargo. Others, in a tragic attempt to flee, were swallowed by the unforgiving waves, their dreams of safety drowned in the depths. For those unable to escape the city's fall, spelled doom, either the harsh chains of slavery or the cold embrace of death awaited them. The Mamluks, known more for their ferocity than their mercy, viewed the Crusaders not just as foes but as an existential threat to be eradicated. In the wake of each city's fall, scenes of mass executions and the systematic enslavement of survivors painted a grim picture. The vibrant Christian communities that had once flourished in the Levant were left in ruins, their cultural and spiritual lifeblood drained away, never to fully recover. The fall of Acre in 1291 did not merely mark the end of a chapter. It was the closing of an entire book. For nearly 2 centuries, these Crusader states had been a European enclave in the heart of the Muslim world, their presence a constant in the region's complex tapestry. Their demise was a cataclysmic shift, realigning the political and religious contours of the area. Yet while the physical presence of the Crusaders ended, their legacy lingered like a ghost, influencing the relations between the Christian West and the Muslim East for generations to come. Invoked by various leaders from Ottoman sultans to modern-day jihadists, the memory of the Crusades became emblematic of an eternal clash between Islam and Christendom, a historical echo that would resonate through time. The Crusades were not merely about grand historical narratives or religious symbolism. No, it was a struggle for life and death, an ordeal of surviving in a world ravaged by war and religious discord. Picture a life where violence and brutality were the daily bread, where allegiances were as shifting as the sands, and the only solace was the distant promise of eternal salvation amidst the ceaseless peril and hardship. In the end, the true legacy of the Crusades might not lie in the majestic castles or the epic battles etched into the annals of history. Instead, it's the human stories, those of the knights and foot soldiers, the merchants and peasants, the men and women whose lives were the battleground of this centuries-long clash of civilizations. Their voices, though silent in history, echo through time with their struggles, their victories, and their sorrows. What do these stories tell us? They remind us of the human cost of war, the profound strength of faith, even in the darkest times. They are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a spirit that persists in a world where, as Hobbes would later observe, life was often nasty, brutish, and short. From our modern perspective, looking back at the Crusades, we might see them as a harsh reminder of the grim reality of medieval existence. Yet might they also hold a lesson for us today, a poignant reminder that even against the backdrop of seemingly insurmountable odds, humanity has always found ways to endure, to adapt, and to harbor hope for a brighter tomorrow. As we traverse the annals of history, we find ourselves in the midst of one of the most tempestuous and dramatic periods known to humankind. The Crusades, though long concluded, leave behind a legacy that continues to resonate through the ages, a poignant reminder of faith's power and the futility of war. They serve as a beacon illuminating the unyielding spirit of those who endured such trials. So the next time you grumble about the trials of contemporary life, pause and reflect. At least you are not confined within the cold, drafty walls of a medieval Crusader castle, anxiously anticipating the relentless advance of the Mamluks. And with this thought to comfort you, dear listener, I bid you a peaceful night. May your slumber be filled not with the clamor of battle or the roar of siege engines, but with the gentle embrace of today's simple pleasures and comforts. The Third Crusade was not merely a battle. It was a monumental collision of egos, faiths, and civilizations, forever altering the tapestry of the Holy Land. Central to this grand narrative were 2 iconic figures, Richard the Lionheart, the newly anointed King of England, and Saladin, the charismatic leader who had galvanized the Islamic world in opposition to the Crusaders. Richard, a true warrior king, was celebrated for his valor, strategic acumen, and fiery disposition. He had pledged to reclaim Jerusalem from Saladin at any cost. Yet his path was fraught with the perilous politics of the Crusader states. Leaders like Philip II of France and Frederick Barbarossa of Germany eyed Richard's ambition with suspicion, fearing he might exploit the crusade to aggrandize his own power. As Richard and his legions journeyed towards the Holy Land, they encountered myriad challenges, each more daunting than the last in their quest to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Imagine the stakes, the tension, the sheer human drama unfolding under the scorching Middle Eastern sun. What price would be paid for the dream of Jerusalem? Richard's journey was a saga of perseverance and pain, a trek through trials that tested the very fiber of his resolve. Many succumbed to the ravages of disease, the gnawing pangs of hunger, and the relentless assaults from hostile adversaries. Yet Richard, undaunted, was driven by an unyielding spirit to prove his mettle as a leader and to honor his sacred vow to reclaim Jerusalem. Upon his arrival in the Holy Land in 1191, he was met with a sight that could break even the strongest of hearts. The Crusader states were in shambles, morale shattered by the fall of Jerusalem and the calamity at Hattin. But Richard, with the urgency of a man possessed, took command. He seized the strategic city of Acre after a grueling siege, and in a chilling act of retribution, ordered the execution of 2,700 Muslim prisoners when Saladin failed to meet the ransom. This brutal decree echoed across the Muslim world, setting the stage for a fierce showdown with Saladin. For the next 2 years, Richard and Saladin played a deadly game of cat and mouse, their encounters marked by sudden raids, fierce skirmishes, and occasional full-scale battles. Richard, with the cunning of a master strategist, wielded his cavalry like a blade, slicing through numerically superior forces with precision. His most celebrated victory came at the Battle of Arsuf in 1191, where his audacious charge shattered the Muslim lines, sending Saladin's forces into disarray. Yet despite these tactical triumphs, Jerusalem remained out of reach. Its defenses too formidable, his own forces too weary and depleted. The bitter truth was that Richard could not fulfill his ultimate goal. With heavy heart and no other recourse, he was compelled to broker a truce with Saladin. This agreement, while allowing Christian pilgrims access to the holy sites, left Jerusalem under Muslim control. What a bitter draught for Richard to drink. Yet in 1192, the Third Crusade concluded with both leaders claiming a semblance of victory, each in their own right. As King Richard set sail back to the shores of Europe, his heart swelled with pride at the victories he had secured, yet it ached with the bitter realization of the Crusade's ultimate futility. Jerusalem, the jewel of his ambitions, remained steadfastly in the grasp of Saladin, who had not only defended the holy city, but also compelled the Crusaders to recognize Muslim sovereignty over the region. What was the cost of this relentless pursuit? Countless lives, lost fortunes, squandered and dreams shattered. The Holy Land, despite all the blood and treasure poured into its conquest, stood as an unyielding testament to the futility of such endeavors. The vision of a Christian Jerusalem shimmering on the horizon was nothing but a mirage, beckoning European rulers and warriors with its elusive promise for generations yet unborn. For those who endured the tempest of the Third Crusade, it was an era marked by profound suffering, violence, and an unsettling uncertainty. The collision of faiths and cultures unleashed a torrent of atrocities and brutalities, where the common folk as ever bore the heaviest burden. Caught in the vortex of their leaders' ambitions and the grim realities of a land ravaged by war, their lives were a testament to resilience amidst chaos. Yet within this tapestry of despair, threads of hope and humanity wove their way through. Tales emerged of chivalry, of honor between adversaries, of a mutual respect born from the recognition of each other's courage and prowess. There were stories, too, of ordinary people who, despite their differences, found ways to live alongside one another, to cooperate, and even to find common ground. These fleeting moments of light, though scarce, remind us that even in the darkest times, the human spirit can shine through resilient and enduring. As the echoes of the Third Crusade faded into history, the stage was set for yet another act in the long, sorrowful saga of the Crusades. The dream of a Christian Jerusalem, Though a mirage continued to burn fiercely in the hearts of European knights and rulers, its allure as potent as ever. As the echoes of conflict reverberated across the ground, the once distant dream of peace seemed to slip ever further away. In the years that would unfold, fresh crusades would spring forth, each weaving its own intricate tapestry of victories and sorrows. Yet amidst this ever-shifting landscape, one truth held steadfast: the profound anguish and hardship borne by those ensnared in these holy wars. For the souls of the Holy Land, be they Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, these crusades spelled an era of ceaseless turmoil and strife, a time when the fancies of far-off sovereigns could shatter their lives in an instant. The Fourth Crusade, which set sail in 1202, veered into even stranger and more tragic waters than its forebears. Rather than march towards the Holy Land, the Crusaders found themselves tangled in a labyrinth of political machinations and betrayal, which ultimately led them to the very gates of one of the medieval world's most splendid cities, Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. Oh, how the narrative of the Fourth Crusade is steeped in avarice, ambition, and the most unintended of outcomes. It all started with the noblest of aspirations to deliver a crushing blow to the Muslim world and reclaim Jerusalem once and for all. But as history so often teaches us, plans seldom survive contact with reality. Guided by the charismatic yet merciless Boniface of Montferrat, the Crusaders found themselves ensnared in a web of debt to the Venetians, who had supplied the fleet and provisions for their voyage. These shrewd merchants of Venice, always with an eye for profit, saw in the Crusaders not just a means to an end, but a tool to advance their own commercial ambitions. In a twist of fate that would shock many, the Venetians persuaded the Crusaders to assist in capturing Zara, a Christian stronghold that had defied Venetian authority. Imagine the horror and the moral quandary faced by these warriors as they turned their arms not against the infidel, but against fellow believers in Christ. But oh, the audacity of Boniface and the Venetians knew no bounds. As if the initial betrayal wasn't enough, they conjured an even more brazen scheme. Imagine using the Crusaders, those sworn to protect Christian lands, to overthrow the Byzantine emperor himself. Their plan was to install a puppet ruler, one who would dance to the tune of Venetian interests. This was no mere plot. It was a full-blown conspiracy against Constantinople, the jewel of Christendom. In April 1204, the unthinkable happened. The Crusaders, like a tempest unleashed, stormed the city's ancient walls. What followed was not just a battle, but a cataclysm. For 3 harrowing days, Constantinople, a city that had stood as a beacon of faith and learning, was subjected to a merciless sacking. Churches were defiled, treasures were plundered, and innocent lives were snuffed out in a wave of violence that left the once mighty Byzantine Empire gasping for breath. The fall of Constantinople wasn't just a military defeat. It was a spiritual and cultural catastrophe. Shockwaves reverberated through the Christian world. This was not merely a defeat, but a profound betrayal, a sacrilege that would echo through the centuries. The Byzantine Empire, once a formidable bulwark against Muslim expansion, was now a shadow of its former self, ripe for the picking by the Ottoman Turks, who would eventually claim it. For the inhabitants of Constantinople, the Fourth Crusade was a living nightmare. Their city, which had thrived for a millennium, was now a smoldering ruin. The survivors, their spirits crushed, were left to sift through the ashes of their once vibrant lives. The legacy of this crusade. It is a stain on history, a dark chapter that teaches us the perils of religious zealotry, political machinations, and the unforeseen horrors of war. Yet amidst the ruins, the dream of a Christian Jerusalem still flickered in the hearts of European knights and rulers. The Crusades would persist, driven by a relentless pursuit of a vision that seemed ever more elusive. As the echoes of clashing steel faded into the annals of history, the once divided Muslim world was undergoing a profound transformation. Emerging from the shadows, a new generation of resolute leaders began to weave the frayed edges of their realm into a united front. Oh, how the tides had turned. The rise of the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt became the beacon of change, a pivotal moment in the epic struggle for dominion over the sacred lands. The Mamluks. These formidable warriors were not just soldiers, but a force of nature comprised of highly trained slave soldiers whose loyalty to their rulers was as fierce as their battle prowess. Under the strategic brilliance of commanders like Baybars and Kalawun, they unleashed a storm upon the Crusaders, delivering devastating blows that echoed through the ages. With each victory, they pushed the invaders back inch by inch towards the coast, their resolve as unyielding as the desert sands. The final chapter of this saga unfolded in 1291, with the fall of Acre, the last bastion of Crusader hope. For months, this city had stood defiant, its walls a testament to human endurance against overwhelming odds. Yet when the Mamluk forces descended like a relentless tide, Acre's fate was sealed in a maelstrom of blood and fury. Ah, the fall of Acre. It was not just a city that fell, but an era. The last breath of the Crusader dream exhaled into the winds of change. For nearly 2 centuries, knights from across Europe had bled into the earth of Palestine, driven by a fervor as potent as it was perilous. Their ambition, a blend of divine zeal and earthly desire, had clashed with the stark realities of a land that refused to be tamed. For the inhabitants of this holy land, both Muslim and Christian, the cessation of Crusades brought a bittersweet relief, a chance to heal, to rebuild from the ashes of generations of strife. Yet the scars left by those wars would not fade quickly. They would linger, influencing the very fabric of the region's politics and culture for centuries to come. Centuries removed, we view the Crusades with a romanticized lens, seeing them as a grand, epic confrontation, a colossal clash of civilizations that sculpted history's trajectory. Yet for those ensnared in its vortex, the humble farmers, the bustling merchants, the valiant soldiers, and the innocent civilians, these were times of harrowing tribulation and relentless anguish. These were days when the cruelty of man's capacity to inflict suffering upon his fellow human was laid bare, stark and unforgiving. Oh, the legacy of the Crusades. It is not merely a tapestry of historical events, but a profound lesson on the perils of religious zealotry, a stark reminder of the futility of wielding force to impose one's creed. How often must we be reminded of this truth? As the world wrestles with the intricate dance between faith and governance, this lesson rings ever more poignant. Imagine, if you will, the daily existence during those tumultuous times. The pervasive dread of sudden violence, the crushing weight of poverty, the overwhelming sense of helplessness against the tide of events. For us, nestled in the warmth and safety of the modern era, it is a challenge to grasp the raw, visceral reality of life then. Yet by delving into the heart of their experiences, we uncover not just the resilience of the human spirit, but its sheer, indomitable courage in the face of darkness. Thus, let us not merely recount the Crusades as a sweeping saga of historical proportions. Let us embrace it as a deeply human narrative, one that echoes through time, speaking to the perennial struggles and victories of our shared human condition. It is through understanding and learning from these past errors that we can aspire to craft a future where compassion triumphs over conflict. Can we not, in our collective wisdom, strive for a future that is more just, more compassionate, and more peaceful for all during 40? Of the Knights Templar and Hospitaller. Here's a saga drenched in intrigue and brutality, a story of noble intentions twisted by the harsh winds of war and politics. These military orders, born from the fiery religious fervor of the Crusades, were initially dedicated to the lofty goal of safeguarding pilgrims on their perilous journeys through the Holy Land. Founded in the early 12th century, the Knights Templar started as a modest band of warrior monks bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Their mission was simple, yet noble, to ensure the safe passage of Christian pilgrims along the hazardous roads of Outremer. But as the Crusades intensified and the treasuries of Europe swelled, these humble guardians evolved into a mighty military force and, more intriguingly, into a financial powerhouse. Worcester 1409. Throughout the Crusader states, grand fortresses adorned with the Templar cross rose like sentinels, guarding strategic roads and ports. Within these formidable walls, knights and sergeants alike honed their martial prowess, mastering sword, lance, and crossbow. Their battlefield discipline and ferocity became legendary, their white surcoats emblazoned with the blood-red cross, instilling fear into the hearts of their adversaries. 10506. Yet their prowess was not confined to the battlefield. As their wealth and influence expanded, so did their role as financial intermediaries for the crowned heads of Europe. Pilgrims entrusted their valuables to Templar treasuries, and a letter of credit from a Templar preceptory was as good as gold from London to Jerusalem. Kings and popes alike turned to them for counsel and loans. 11536. But for all their power and prestige, could the Knights Templar maintain their sacred vows amidst the intoxicating allure of wealth and influence? Even in their zenith of power and prestige, the Knights Templar were not sheltered from the tempestuous waves of politics and greed that crashed around them. Whispers of arcane rites and heretical deeds shadowed their every move, stoked by the envy of their amassed treasures and the distrust sown by their veil of secrecy. When the fervor of the Crusades ebbed like sandcastles washed away by the relentless tide, the Templars found themselves adrift in a world that had little use for warriors of the faith. The fall of Acre in 1291. It was the resounding knell for the Templars' sacred mission. Within a mere 2 decades, their fate took a grim turn under the covetous gaze of a French king eager to plunder their wealth and a pope anxious to flex his ecclesiastical muscles. Charged with heresy, blasphemy, and a litany of unspeakable sins, many of these once celebrated knights faced dungeons, excruciating torture, and the fiery stake. Contrastingly, the Knights Hospitaller, though also born from a mission of care, found themselves navigating the changing tides with somewhat more grace. Originally dedicated to the healing of the sick and wounded in Jerusalem's Hospital of St. John, they too girded themselves for battle, defending the Holy Land with a valor and prowess that echoed through the ages. After Acre's collapse, they sought refuge first on Cyprus, then on the island of Rhodes, where they forged a new bastion and a formidable maritime force. For over 2 centuries, their galleys ruled the eastern Mediterranean, their sails a familiar sight as they launched audacious raids on Ottoman ports. Yet the relentless march of the Ottoman Empire was an unstoppable force, and in 1522, after a grueling 6-month siege, the Hospitallers had to yield Rhodes, retreating once again, this time to the rugged shores of Malta. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the battered walls of their fortress, the Hospitallers prepared for what would be their final stand. In the year of our Lord, 1565, they faced down the might of the Ottoman Empire, their swords and spirits unyielding, etching their names into the annals of history as the unbreakable guardians of Christendom. Yet even heroes are bound by the sands of time, and the Hospitallers, with all their valor, were a vestige of an era slipping into shadow. Oh, how the flames of the Crusades, once blazing with fervor, now dwindled to mere embers, their heat no longer warming the hearts of the faithful. The world around them was morphing, new empires emerging from the ashes of the old, their certainties crumbling like ancient parchment. Here we find ourselves, dear listener, at the twilight of our saga, watching as the last vestiges of the Crusader dream fade into the lore of history. For almost 2 centuries, the vision of a Christian Holy Land had ignited the souls of Europe, stirring a whirlwind of religious zeal, political maneuvering, and human anguish. Tens of thousands, from the noblest knight to the humblest peasant, were swept up in this tide, driven by faith, avarice, or sheer desperation. The cost incalculable in gold, immeasurable in blood. Deeds of great valor were etched alongside acts of unspeakable horror. Kingdoms rose and crumbled. Fortunes were forged, and then forgotten lives were celebrated and then cast into oblivion. What then can we glean from this stormy chapter of our shared history? There are no simple answers, no clear-cut lessons to be learned. The Crusades, in all their complexity, served as a mirror to the medieval psyche, reflecting both its luminous aspirations and its darkest depths. They were a collision of worlds, a crucible for change, a testament to the heights of human spirit and its capacity for descent into darkness. Perhaps in the final reckoning, the true legacy of the Crusades lies not in the stone fortresses or the conquered lands, but in the narratives they bequeath to us. tales of bravery and betrayal of sanctity, and savagery of hope and heartbreak. As long as these stories are told, the essence of those times, the very heartbeat of the era, will continue to resonate through the quarters of time. As we have done this evening, the echoes of the Crusades will resonate through time, murmuring to us of a bygone world, of the eternal battles waged within the human soul. But now, cherished listener, let us take our leave from the valiant knights and devout pilgrims, the sagacious sultans and wary emperors, the radiant cities and the shahs stained with blood from the era of the Crusades. Let their spirits find peace, their deeds both valiant and vile, dissolve into the fog of dreams and recollections. The candle flickers, its flame dimming, and the night deepens around us. It is time to gently surrender to the comforting arms of slumber. May your dreams be more soothing than the harsh realities of history, and may the morning greet you with renewed vigor to confront the trials of a fresh day. Good night, dear listener, may you fare well. As the dust settled following the collapse of Acre in 1291, the last stronghold of the Crusader states, it signaled the conclusion of an epic that had commenced nearly 2 centuries prior with Pope Urban II's fervent call to arms. The vision of Christian kingdoms in the Holy Land had at last been snuffed out. For the dwellers of Outremer, the land beyond the sea, it was a bitter, humiliating end to a life always shadowed by peril and unpredictability. The final siege of Acre was a desperate, blood-soaked ordeal, with the city's defenders holding out for weeks against the overwhelming might of the Mamluks. When the walls were finally breached, the streets flowed crimson as the triumphant Mamluks mercilessly slaughtered the remaining inhabitants. Men, women, children all fell to the sword, their cries echoing through the city like a grim symphony of defeat. What once was a beacon of hope, a fortress of faith, now lay in ruins, its demise marking the close of a chapter filled with both glory and tragedy. As the last echoes of battle cries faded into the somber silence of Acre's ruins, the surviving Crusaders faced a heart-rending exodus. Their dreams of a triumphant Christendom in the Holy Land, which had ignited their spirits through countless battles and unimaginable hardships, now lay shattered like the very stones beneath their feet. What had it all been for the love he sacrificed, the fortunes squandered, the endless years of strife and bloodshed? A poignant question lingered in the air, as heavy as the smoke from the burning city. The knights of the great military orders, the Templars and the Hospitallers, set sail into an ocean of uncertainty. Their once mighty organizations, now shadows of their former glory, drifted without purpose or direction. The fall of Acre was not just a defeat, it was a profound moment of despair and disillusionment. The dream they had chased, the chimera of a Holy Land reclaimed, had evaporated, leaving behind only ashes of what once was. Yet even as the Crusader era drew to a close, its echoes would reverberate through the quarters of time. The 200-year presence of these fervent warriors had not merely been a chapter in history, but a saga that sculpted the very fabric of the region's culture, society, and politics. Initially a religious quest, a sacred mission to wrest Jerusalem from those deemed infidels, the Crusades morphed into a complex tapestry of motives and consequences. They became a colossal clash of civilizations, a relentless struggle for supremacy, not just in faith but in political and economic spheres. The Crusades catalyzed profound social and cultural transformations, leaving behind a legacy that would outlive the warriors themselves. On the political chessboard, the Crusades reshaped the medieval world's power dynamics. From the ashes of conflict rose the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, a power forged in the fiery trials of these wars. This formidable entity would not only expel the Crusaders from the Levant, but also stand as a bulwark against the relentless Mongol advance, marking a pivotal shift in the balance of power. The Crusades, in their complexity and consequence, had sown seeds that would grow into the mighty trees of history. At the Battle of Ain Jalut in 1260, a pivotal victory unfolded, one that would send ripples through the sands of time, altering the destiny of the Middle East and beyond. Meanwhile, in the heart of Europe, the Crusades had not only etched deep scars, but had also molded the very fabric of its political and social tapestry, influencing centuries to come. Imagine the rise of formidable monarchies in England and France, not merely as a historical footnote, but as a direct response to the logistical and financial demands of these holy wars. The fervor for religion stoked by the flames of the Crusades solidified the Catholic Church's grip on power, its influence echoing through the corridors of time. Envision Pope Urban II in his divine fervor first articulating the concept of a just war against the adversaries of Christendom, a notion that would be summoned repeatedly in the tumultuous centuries ahead. From the Reconquista in Spain to the fierce wars of the Reformation, this idea shaped countless battles and ideologies. But delve deeper and you'll find the Crusades' most enduring legacy was not in the battles won or lost, but in the profound transformation of Western perceptions of the Islamic world. For centuries, the Muslim Saracen became a staple in European literature and art, an enigmatic, exotic figure symbolizing the other, against which Christendom defined its identity. The Crusades, though, were not merely about conflict. They were a bridge for cultural exchange. Europeans for the first time encountered the sophisticated cultures of the Islamic world, absorbing new ideas, technologies, and ways of life. This cross-pollination would forever alter European art, architecture, science, and philosophy, enriching the continent's cultural landscape. Yet amidst this tapestry of cultural exchange and ideological fervor, let us not forget the human cost. The Crusades were a relentless epic of violent suffering and loss. For the common folk peasants, foot soldiers, and the dwellers of besieged cities, life was often harsh, cruel, and unforgiving. Their stories, though less celebrated, are the poignant reminders of the true cost of these historical epics. The specter of death loomed large, an ever-present shadow over the lives of those caught in the maelstrom of disease, starvation, and relentless warfare. 1 Chronicles 25:4-44. Even those who managed to return from the Crusades bore the weight of profound psychological scars, their souls deeply etched with the horrors they had witnessed. How could one not question the very foundations of their faith, the righteousness of a cause that led to such devastation? Their beliefs, once firm, now trembled on the brink of collapse, shaken to their very core. The enduring lesson from this tumultuous era, perhaps it is the stark folly of religious warfare, the perilous dance with fanaticism, and the poison of intolerance. Verse 26:12. During the Crusades, people on all sides were disturbingly eager to kill or be killed in the name of their convictions, to strip away the humanity of those who differed from them, to demonize the other. Isn't it chillingly relevant today, as we face similar battles against extremism, as we struggle to bridge the divides of religion and culture? The need for understanding, for coexistence in a world ever more interconnected, has never been more urgent. As we delve into the intricate tapestry of the Crusades' history, let us not forget the myriad human stories woven into this epic saga. 26:41. Tales of bravery and fear, of unwavering faith and crippling doubt, of profound love and heart-wrenching loss. While our minds often linger on the figures of kings and queens, knights and generals, it was the everyday people, the farmers, the blacksmiths, the mothers, and the children who truly shouldered the burden of this centuries-long conflict. War to 27:15. Their stories might be whispers in the winds of time, yet they are no less vital. They echo the true cost of war, showcasing the incredible resilience and the enduring spirit of humanity against the backdrop of unimaginable adversity. As we reflect on the legacy of the Crusades, what lessons do they whisper to us across the ages? In this poignant reflection on history, let us not forget those whose lives were caught in the relentless currents of time, those who endured suffering and perished for causes they might scarcely have comprehended. Let our hearts honor the fallen knights, the humble foot soldiers, the innocent victims of sieges and massacres, and the countless souls whose remains are now one with the ever-shifting sands of the Levant. May we pay homage to their memory by striving towards a world where diversity in religion and culture is not just tolerated, but celebrated. A world where empathy and understanding reign supreme over hatred and bigotry, where the nightmares of war fade into the annals of history. For isn't it the ultimate tribute to those who have fallen? The saga of the Crusades, rich with tales of battle monarchs and fervent faith, transcends mere historical recounting. It is a vivid tapestry of the human condition woven with threads of both noble aspirations and darkest deeds. This narrative, which began with Pope Urban II's fateful proclamation, still echoes through the corridors of time, resonating with us a millennium later. And as this story is retold, let it not merely serve as a historical curiosity or a tale of warning. Instead, let it be a vital thread in the intricate fabric of human history, a narrative from which we draw wisdom, learning from both its glories and its griefs. As we journey through our own epic, let us carry these lessons close, ever conscious of the profound impact and potential perils of the human spirit. With each step towards Jerusalem, the Crusaders not only marched towards a holy city, but also into the heart of what it means to be human, grappling with ideals and the stark realities of their pursuit. As the harsh realities of medieval warfare began to weigh heavily upon the souls of the Crusaders, the relentless sun bore down with an unyielding ferocity across the barren expanses of Anatolia and the Levant. Oh, the torment! Many a brave soldier succumbed to the cruel embrace of thirst and exhaustion, their lifeless forms becoming somber markers along the dusty, unforgiving roads. Disease, that silent assassin, thrived in the squalor and congestion of the camps, spreading dysentery and typhoid fever like wildfire through the ranks. For the nobles and knights, the journey was harsh, yet they bore it with a semblance of dignity, cushioned by the comforts their wealth could buy, better provisions, ample sustenance, and small luxuries that whispered of home. But for the common foot soldiers and camp followers, especially the impoverished peasants who had heeded the Pope's call, the crusade transformed into a waking nightmare. They trudged forward, their only possessions, the tattered garments on their backs, their stomachs growling for more than the meager scraps they could muster, their hearts clinging to the desperate hope that their suffering might carve a path to salvation. As they ventured deeper into the shadow of hostile lands, the ominous presence of the Seljuk Turks loomed like a specter of doom. These warriors, swift as the wind on their light cavalry, were adept in the art of guerrilla warfare. They struck like lightning only to dissolve into the rugged terrain before the knights could muster a response. This ceaseless harassment, picking off the vulnerable and then disappearing, was a maddening ordeal for the European forces, accustomed as they were to the honor of face-to-face combat. The siege of Antioch in 1097 loomed as a monumental trial for the Crusaders' fortitude. Here stood a city vast and fortified, its walls like cliffs of stone manned by a resolute Turkish garrison. The Crusaders, undeterred, prepared for a siege that would test their mettle. They toiled under the watchful eye of the sun, erecting wooden towers, crafting stone-throwing machines, all in a desperate bid to breach the impregnable defenses of Antioch. As the cruel months wore on, the city's defenses began to waver under the relentless siege. Supplies dwindled to mere whispers of sustenance, and once again the Crusaders' armies succumbed to the gnawing pangs of hunger and the insidious creep of disease. It was in these dire depths, amid suffering and despair, that the very essence of the crusade began to morph, shedding its veneer of chivalry and pious restraint. Gone were any illusions of nobility. The gnawing hunger and the ever-looming shadow of death stripped away the last vestiges of restraint. Driven to madness by deprivation, some crusaders committed the unthinkable cannibalism. Desperation clawed at their souls, leading them to raid the surrounding countryside with a ferocity that knew no bounds, pillaging and slaughtering both Muslim and Christian peasants in their frantic search for food and supplies. When Antioch finally fell after an excruciating 8-month siege, the Crusaders' vengeance was a sight of terrible fury. They surged into the city, their blades singing a song of slaughter, felling men, women, and children alike. The streets of Antioch became rivers of blood as the Europeans unleashed the pent-up rage and desperation accumulated over the long, arduous journey and siege. This scene of unrestrained savagery would shock even the battle-hardened Turks and Arabs. For the Crusaders, this was both a catharsis and a profound moral stain, a moment where all the fear, rage, and desperation burst forth in a torrent of violence. Yet it was also a stark betrayal of the Crusades' lofty ideals. What had begun as a noble quest to reclaim the Holy Land in Christ's name had twisted into a ruthless war of conquest, driven by the most base of human instincts. As news of the massacre at Antioch spread like wildfire through the Muslim world, it did not subdue their resistance but rather ignited it. If the Europeans had hoped that their brutality would break the spirit of their adversaries, they were woefully mistaken. Instead, they sowed the seeds of an enduring enmity that would shape the course of history. Emerging from the harrowing shadows of Antioch, the Crusaders pressed onward, their hearts set on the sacred soil of Jerusalem. The streets of Antioch, once vibrant with life, now whispered tales of despair and bloodshed, where any fleeting hope for amicable harmony between the Crusaders and the Islamic world had been mercilessly extinguished. The Crusaders, their numbers diminished by the relentless grip of disease, the cold hand of death, and the silent footsteps of desertion, were no longer mere pilgrims or thrill seekers. They had been forged in the fiery trials of adversity, their spirits hardened like steel, ready to claim their holy city by any means necessary. Oh, but what a daunting path lay before them. Jerusalem, the beacon of their relentless pursuit, shimmered on the horizon, a mere mirage in the scorching desert of their journey. The road to the holy city stretched out longer and more arduous than the Crusaders could fathom, winding through lands bristling with hostility. Here the Muslim forces, increasingly united and resolute, awaited their approach, their resolve as formidable as the walls of the cities they defended. The trials that awaited would dwarf the horrors of Antioch. The First Crusade hurtled towards a conclusion bathed in blood and destiny, a tempest of change that would forever alter the tapestry of the Middle Eastern landscape. For the denizens of this ancient land, be they Muslim, Christian, or Jew, the arrival of these zealous foreigners from the West was not merely an event, but a cataclysm. The serene balance of centuries cultivated under the enlightened rule of Islam was shattered by the incursion of these fierce, unrefined invaders. These crusaders, with their swords gleaming and their faith unwavering, carried not just weapons, but a worldview as rigid and unyielding as their blades. To the Europeans, the Turks and Arabs were scarcely more than heathens, mere pawns in their divine mission. The rich tapestry of Islamic civilization was viewed through a veil of ignorance and enmity, reduced to a land to be seized and a populace to be subjugated. Thus, the march towards Jerusalem was not just a physical journey, but a march through the complexities of human interaction, where every step was a testament to the clash of civilizations, the collision of worlds, and the enduring quest for a city that symbolized so much more than its earthly presence. In the wake of the Crusades' initial bloody triumphs, an unsettling coexistence arose between the European intruders and the native dwellers of the Islamic heartland. These crusaders, a stark minority, barricaded themselves within their fortified enclaves, isolated and surrounded by a landscape bristling with enmity. How could such a situation not be fraught with tension? They clung desperately to a slender thread of supplies and reinforcements from their distant European homeland, striving to maintain their shaky hold on what they deemed the Holy Land. For the Muslim and Jewish inhabitants of these newly established Crusader states, life under Latin Christian dominion was nothing short of a cultural upheaval, a profound shock to their system. Imagine the jarring sight of alien customs, laws, and social structures overturning centuries of tradition. Muslims and Jews, once proud citizens of a land known for its relative tolerance and pluralism, were now relegated to the shadows of their own society, their status diminished, subjected to oppressive taxation, legal discrimination, and the ever-looming specter of violence from their new overlords. Yet in the face of such adversity, the spirit of these native peoples did not wane. They adapted, they survived, and in many ways they thrived. Many learned the languages of their conquerors, becoming essential bridges between the Crusaders and the local populace. Some even found niches within the Crusader administration or as skilled artisans and merchants catering to the needs of the European settlers. But let us not be deceived, this was no harmonious fusion of cultures. It was a coexistence as fragile as glass, constantly on the brink of shattering. The Crusaders, with their poor grasp of the local customs and languages, often misstep their actions, sowing seeds of discord rather than understanding. How could a true meeting of minds and hearts occur under such strange circumstances? The friction between local customs and Islamic law was a relentless source of conflict and confusion. The European settlers, with their overbearing sense of superiority and an unyielding claim to entitlement, were a constant irritation to their Muslim and Jewish subjects who simmered under the yoke of foreign dominion. Moreover, the looming specter of renewed battles between the Crusaders and the encircling Muslim forces darkened the daily existence of all. As the years rolled on and the Crusader presence in the Holy Land solidified, a generation of Europeans emerged who had known no other home. These Pula, as they were called, were an intriguing fusion of Eastern and Western cultures, conversing fluently in Arabic and Turkish, as well as French and Italian, embracing local attire and traditions, and even intermingling with the indigenous populace. Yet despite these cultural integrations, the Pula remained distinctly foreign, a ruling class set apart, ever vigilant, and acutely aware of the fragility of their rule. Their castles and fortified cities were not merely military bulwarks, but also psychological fortresses. These structures allowed the Crusaders to barricade themselves against the unfamiliar world beyond desperately clinging to their identity as Latin Christians amidst an alien landscape. For the Muslims of the Near East, the presence of the Crusaders was a perpetual insult, a stark reminder of their defeat and the desecration of some of Islam's most sacred sites. As the 12th century unfolded, a new cadre of Muslim leaders emerged, resolute in their mission to repel the Europeans back to the sea. Foremost among them was Saladin, the illustrious Kurdish warrior destined to become the scourge of the Crusaders and the orchestrator of their most devastating setback. Saladin's ascent to power was a tale woven from exceptional skill, unyielding ambition, and impeccable timing. Born into a distinguished Kurdish military lineage, he first distinguished himself under the service of the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt. In the heart of the 12th century, a young soldier emerged, his valor and prowess in battle, a beacon of hope for the Islamic world. This was Saladin, a name that would soon resonate with the echoes of history. By 1169, the Fatimid Caliph had seen in him a leader of unparalleled potential and appointed him Vizier of Egypt. With this mantle, Saladin gained command over Egypt's immense wealth and formidable military resources that he wielded with both wisdom and might. From this seat of power, Saladin's vision began to expand. He set his sights on a grand unification of the Islamic lands, dreaming of a world where the crescent would shine unchallenged. He conquered neighboring Muslim states with a blend of military prowess and diplomatic finesse, forging alliances that would bolster his cause. His ambition to drive out the Crusaders from the Holy Land, to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his people's sacred ground. As Saladin's influence stretched across the Levant, the Crusader states found themselves increasingly encircled like ships adrift in a storm. Here was a leader who could both negotiate peace and command war with equal mastery. He united the Islamic factions under one banner, a stark contrast to the Crusaders, whose internal squabbles often distracted them from the growing Muslim threat. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the scent of impending conflict. For those dwelling within the Crusader estates, fear and uncertainty mounted. They watched with bated breath as Saladin's shadow loomed larger, knowing their very existence teetered on the edge of change. Then in 1187, the confrontation they had long dreaded finally arrived. Saladin, now a colossus in the annals of warfare, marched his well-disciplined forces into the kingdom of Jerusalem. The Crusaders, led by the impetuous King Guy of Lusignan, met him at the Horns of Hattin, a barren plateau beside the Sea of Galilee. Here on this unforgiving terrain, a battle was set to unfold that would shape the destiny of the Holy Land. In a devastating turn of events, the Christian army met with a crushing defeat, its remnants left in utter disarray. The battle was not just lost. It was a massacre, with the majority of its valiant leaders either slain or taken captive. King Guy, the heart of the crusade, found himself a prisoner alongside the sacred relic of the true cross, a profound symbol of their divine mission and unyielding faith. We're at 42:15. The repercussions of the Battle of Hattin were immediate, casting a long, dark shadow over the Crusader states. With their army decimated and their king in chains, they stood as a nation stripped of its defenses, vulnerable to the relentless advance of Saladin's forces. Over the subsequent months, this formidable Kurdish leader methodically laid siege to and captured nearly every significant stronghold, from the towering walls of Acre to the seemingly impenetrable mountain fortress of Kerak. To 45. Yet the jewel in the crown, the holy city of Jerusalem, awaited its fate. This city, the very soul of the Crusades, which had been under Christian control for nearly a century, was about to witness a dramatic shift. In October 1187, after a siege that seemed almost too brief, Saladin triumphantly entered Jerusalem. The city, once a beacon of Crusader, might now lay in the hands of the Muslims once more. 43:10. For the Christian inhabitants of Jerusalem, this was a moment of shattering despair. Many fled, hearts heavy with fear of retribution from the victorious Muslims. Yet some remained, placing their fate in the hands of Saladin. In an act of unexpected generosity, considering the brutal conquest of the Crusaders, Saladin chose mercy over vengeance. He allowed the Christian residents to ransom themselves and leave the city unscathed. Verse 43:39. The fall of Jerusalem sent shockwaves through the Christian world. The hard-won victories of the First Crusade had been undone in mere months. What once was a formidable presence in the Levant, the Crusader states were now reduced to mere coastal enclaves. The dream, once so vivid and promising, now seemed a distant, fading memory. The dream of a Christian-ruled Holy Land lay shattered, its ashes smoldering with the defeat of Jerusalem. Yet, like a phoenix from the ruins, the Crusader spirit refused to die. The news of the city's fall ignited a fire across Europe, a blaze that would kindle the flames of the Third Crusade. Monarchs of legendary stature, Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip Augustus of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of Germany, embraced the cross, their hearts set on wresting the sacred city from Saladin's iron grip. For the inhabitants of the Levant, both Muslim and Christian, this was but the dawn of another stormy chapter in the saga of the Crusades. The coming years promised not just epic battles and heroic deeds, but also a tide of suffering, devastation, and religious discord. The closing of the 12th century did not signify an end, but rather ushered in a new intricate phase in the eternal struggle for the Holy Land. As the century waned, the Third Crusade surged into full force. Europe's mightiest armies, spearheaded by some of history's most celebrated warriors, marched upon the Levant, their resolve steeled to reclaim Jerusalem from Saladin's dominion. The stage was set for a monumental clash, one that would once again redraw the map of the Middle East political and spiritual landscape. At the vanguard of this renewed crusade stood Richard the Lionheart, the legendary English monarch whose name alone evoked images of martial valor and fiery spirit. With a zeal as fervent as the flames of his namesake, Richard had taken up the cross, seeking not only earthly glory, but also the redemption of his soul. His journey to the Holy Land in 1191 was marked by the capture of the strategically crucial island of Cyprus, a testament to his strategic acumen and indomitable will. His arrival infused new life into the Crusader forces, their spirits lifted by the presence of this lion-hearted king. The siege of Acre, what a relentless struggle. It was a grueling test of endurance and faith that spanned nearly 2 torturous years. Under the resolute command of the English king, with fresh forces at his side, the Crusaders finally breached the walls of Acre in the heat of July 1191. This victory, a beacon of hope for the Christian cause, carved out a crucial foothold along the sun-drenched Mediterranean coast. Yet amidst the triumph, shadows of darkness crept in, revealing the Crusaders' harsh mentality. Imagine the horror that unfolded after the city's fall. Richard, in a decision that would echo through history, commanded the slaughter of some 2,700 Muslim prisoners, sparing neither women nor children. This act of staggering brutality, even for those brutal times, stood in chilling contrast to Saladin's earlier magnanimity towards Jerusalem's Christian inhabitants. How could such a chasm of understanding and humanity exist between these warring factions? The massacre at Acre was not just a footnote in history. It was a glaring testament to the deep religious and cultural divide that yawned between the Crusaders and the Muslim world they sought to conquer. For Richard and his European peers, the Muslims were not merely enemies on the battlefield, but also heretics whose very existence was an insult to their God. This unforgiving perspective would dictate the trajectory of the Third Crusade, rendering any hope for enduring peace or mutual understanding almost laughably futile. With Acre under their belt, Richard's gaze turned southward, his ambitions set on reclaiming Jerusalem. But Saladin, ever vigilant, held the holy city and its surrounding lands with an iron grip, refusing to yield his hard-won territories without a fierce contest. Thus began a year-long dance of strategy and survival where each warrior sought to outwit and overpower the other across the rugged terrain of the Levant. For those unfortunate enough to be caught in the crossfire of this epic clash, life was reduced to a relentless cycle of turmoil and uncertainty. What must it have been like to live under the shadow of such relentless warfare? The specter of fear, the shadow of uncertainty, and the wrenching pain of displacement haunted the lands. Villages and towns, once serene, now bore the scars of repeated sieges by opposing armies. Their inhabitants, caught in a relentless cycle of occupation, were left at the mercy of soldiers whose whims dictated their fate. Oh, the sight fields and orchards, once vibrant with life, were now trampled into dust or set ablaze. Livestock, the lifeblood of these communities, were either brutally slaughtered or spirited away. Ancient irrigation systems, the lifelines of these agrarian societies, lay wrecked and abandoned. The Third Crusade exacted a toll not only on the land, but on the Crusaders themselves. Disease and hunger prowled through the European ranks like silent predators, while the relentless scorching heat of the Levantine summer drained their vigor and resolve. Many, disheartened by the stark realities of this grueling campaign and the ever-elusive prize of Jerusalem, deserted. They trudged back to the coast, seeking passage home, their spirits as broken as their bodies. Yet amidst this despair, Richard's indomitable will and military prowess kept the flame of the Crusader cause flickering. In September 1191, he orchestrated a breathtaking victory against Saladin at the Battle of Ars. With innovative tactics and the disciplined valor of his knights, he turned the tide, overcoming the Muslims' numerical superiority. This triumph was a beacon of hope, a much-needed salve to the wounded morale of the Crusaders, and it seemed to pave the way for an assault on Jerusalem. However, as they ventured deeper into the heartland, the logistical and political quagmires thickened. The European army, already battered by months of relentless campaigning, stretched itself perilously thin, with supply lines as fragile as spider silk. Tensions within the Crusader leadership, particularly between Richard and the French king, Philip Augustus, simmered and threatened to unravel the very fabric of their mission. The bitter truth dawned on Richard as he gazed upon the distant walls of Jerusalem. Even if he could capture the city, holding it against Saladin's inevitable counterattack would be an impossible feat without the necessary manpower and resources. Thus, with a heavy heart, he made the heart-rending decision to turn back, leaving the dream of Jerusalem to dissolve into the dust of what once was Constantinople as the Fourth Crusade staggered on. Oh, what a tragic and inglorious end. The once glorious city, the shining beacon of Christendom, now lay in utter desolation. Its magnificent palaces and sacred churches stripped bare, their treasures pillaged. Its citizens, once proud, now scattered like autumn leaves or bound in chains of slavery. The Crusaders, in a twist of fate most cruel and unfathomable, had turned their righteous swords not against the infidels, but against their own Christian brethren. The Byzantine Empire, already teetering on the brink of collapse, was dealt a mortal wound from which it would never heal. For the common folk of the 13th century, the sheer horror and bewilderment at the outcome of the Fourth Crusade must have been soul-crushing. How could an army assembled with the noble intent of reclaiming Jerusalem instead sow such devastation upon the greatest Christian city on earth? The labyrinthine plots and cold political maneuvers that precipitated this disaster were beyond the grasp of the simple peasant or weary foot soldier. They could only stand in awe or perhaps in despair at the inscrutable machinations of popes and kings that could culminate in such a calamity. In the grand halls of Venice, in the fragmented estates of the Crusade, those who had orchestrated this tragedy were quick to exploit the new order. The Venetians, harboring long-standing envy of Constantinople's trade dominance, now eagerly claimed the choicest ports and islands for their own gain. Meanwhile, the Crusader lords, in a cruel irony, divided the spoils of the Byzantine territories, establishing feudal principalities that mocked the very essence of Christian unity they had sworn to uphold. As the high and mighty reveled in their conquest, the life of the common people grew only more arduous. The shattered remnants of the Byzantine Empire could no longer stand as a bulwark against the encroaching Muslim powers, allowing the Turks and others to steadily erode Christian lands. Trade routes, once vibrant with the exchange of goods and culture, now faltered, casting long shadows over the future of the region. The specter of scarcity and the relentless surge of inflation cast a long shadow over the region, their tendrils reaching into the very souls of the people. Yet perhaps the most heart-wrenching legacy of this tumultuous era was the catastrophic downfall of Constantinople, a city once vibrant with life and culture. This devastating blow not only shattered the heart of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, but also deepened the schism between the Catholic West and the Orthodox East, a chasm that still echoes with the pain of division to this very day. In the ensuing years, the quest to reclaim Jerusalem and fortify the crumbling Crusader estates saw several valiant, albeit futile attempts. The Fifth Crusade of 1217, for instance, momentarily seized the Egyptian port of Damietta, only to be undone by an impetuous march towards Cairo, leading to their entrapment and subsequent surrender. Meanwhile, the enigmatic Emperor Frederick II, with his blend of charisma and arrogance, managed a remarkable feat in 1229 by negotiating the peaceful return of Jerusalem not through the clash of swords, but through the art of diplomacy with the Muslim rulers. Alas, this triumph was fleeting. Jerusalem slipped back into Muslim hands by 1244. Other crusades like the Sixth and Seventh flickered briefly before fading into obscurity, their flames extinguished without achieving any lasting impact. Among these, the so-called Children's Crusade of 1212 stands out as a poignant testament to the era's fervor and chaos. Thousands of young, hopeful peasants from France and Germany, driven by the belief in their purity and divine favor, set out to reclaim the Holy Land. Their innocence was their shield, their faith, their sword. Yet their journey was marred by tragedy. Few ever reached the Middle East, with many dispersing or tragically ending up in slavery, far from their goal. This episode, though shrouded in historical doubt, paints a stark picture of the religious zeal and societal unrest that convulsed Europe in the 13th century. As time wore on and the Crusader states crumbled like sandcastles against the tide, the once gleaming dream of a Christian-held Jerusalem seemed to recede further into the realm of myth and memory. As the Crusaders' initial dominance waned, the once fragmented powers of the East began to coalesce, their strength growing with each passing year. Among these, the Mamluk dynasty of Egypt emerged as an unyielding force, their resolve hardening as the 13th century unfolded. These Mamluks, warriors from childhood slaves in name, yet fierce in spirit, and formed an indomitable military might, destined to obliterate the Crusader presence from the lands they so fiercely contested. Rising like a phoenix from the ashes of servitude was Baibars, a name that would echo through the annals of history. A man of ferocious ambition and cunning, he ascended from slavery to the Sultanate of Egypt and Syria. With a mind as sharp as his sword, Baibars orchestrated victories that not only subdued the Crusaders, but also quelled the threats from fellow Muslim factions, notably the Mongols. His conquest of Antioch in 1268 was the death knell for Crusader dominance, signaling the beginning of their end. The final act of this tragic drama unfolded at Acre in 1291, the last bastion of Crusader power in the Holy Land. For weeks, the Mamluks, under the command of Sultan al-Ashraf Khalil, unleashed relentless barrages against the city's defenses, their siege engines thundering like the drums of fate. Despite the valiant efforts of the Templars, Hospitallers and other orders, the walls of Acre crumbled under the onslaught. When the city fell, its fate was sealed with a brutality that chills the soul. Its people were massacred or enslaved, their cries lost in the chaos of conquest. Only a fortunate few crusaders escaped the slaughter, their ships slicing through the dark waters to safety. But for most, the end was grim. They found only an unmarked grave in the desolate sands, their dreams of holy conquest buried with them. Thus, after 2 centuries of relentless conflict, the Crusades met their demise on the sorrowful shores of Acre. The toll of this era is staggering to contemplate. Hundreds of thousands perished, their lives extinguished in the flames of zealotry and the cold winds of war. How many more must suffer before peace can claim this land as its own? A vast expanse, once vibrant, now bears the indelible scars of a bygone era, its people embittered by the harsh winds of history. The Crusades, initially embarked upon with the noble aspiration of liberating the sacred land from Muslim dominion, spiraled into a vortex of avarice, savagery, and deceit, warping their lofty ideals into a grotesque parody of their original intent. Imagine the profound disillusionment felt by those who lived through and succeeded these tumultuous times. How could one reconcile the divine promise of celestial glory with the horrific deeds perpetrated by the Crusaders in the very soil where Christ had sown seeds of peace and compassion? How could the infallible might of the Roman Catholic Church reconcile with the repeated failures of popes and monarchs to fulfill their grandiose vows of reclaiming Jerusalem? For minds steeped in unwavering faith in the righteousness of the Crusades, this shattering of illusions must have been nothing short of traumatic. And yet, as the once mighty Crusade estates disintegrated into dust, their legacy persisted, echoing through the corridors of time. The Crusades marked a pivotal moment in the intricate dance between the Christian West and the Muslim East, sowing seeds of suspicion, animosity, and misunderstanding that, to some extent, still sprout today. Simultaneously, the exposure to the flourishing civilizations of the Middle East during these campaigns profoundly influenced European culture, science, and technology. The era also witnessed the ascent of formidable new entities, the military orders and the Italian merchant republics, entities that would steer the course of European history in profound ways. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Crusades lies in the very notion they embodied, that violence and warfare can be sanctified in the name of religion, and that earthly battles could be waged with the blessing of the divine. This idea, once unleashed, would continue to shape human conflict, a specter haunting the moral landscape of our world. Suffering, it is said, is a mere pittance when weighed against the eternal glory it promises. This intoxicating blend of faith and force has echoed through time, driving the conquests of the Americas, the brutal religious conflicts that tore through Europe, and the colonial overreaches of the 19th and 20th centuries. Even now, we are caught in the aftermath of the Crusades, wrestling with the snarled legacy of holy wars and righteous conquests that were first woven into the fabric of history by the impassioned words of Pope Urban II nearly 1,000 years ago. As we ponder this tempestuous and sorrowful chapter of our collective past, one cannot help but be enveloped by a profound sense of mourning and remorse. Oh, the lives sacrificed, the potential wasted, the agony endured, all in the pursuit of divine favor and undying fame. What lessons might we extract from such a tumultuous period? Perhaps the most chilling is the peril of unbridled zeal, where our noblest aspirations become tainted by our primal urges. In a world still scarred by religious discord and sectarian strife, this caution rings as true and urgent as ever. Yet amidst the shadows, let us not forget the sparks of humanity and heroism that flickered even during the darkest times of the Crusades. Consider the valor of the foot soldiers who ventured into the abyss for their beliefs, the endurance of civilians who bore unspeakable trials, and the occasional acts of chivalry and compassion that pierced through the savagery of war. These brief shining moments remind us of the extraordinary resilience and hope inherent in the human spirit, even when confronted with the most harrowing adversities. In the blood-drenched pages of history, we find ourselves immersed in the Crusades, a chapter as dark and chilling as it is irresistibly captivating. From the initial spark of religious fervor in Claremont to the last desperate breaths of Acre, we have journeyed through the peaks and abysses of human spirit, witnessing the noble aspirations and grim truths that defined an epoch. This saga, both enthralling and horrifying, grips us with its tales of faith and folly, of valor and viciousness, showcasing the pinnacle and the pitfall of human endeavor. As you surrender to the embrace of slumber, reflect on the peculiar whims of fate and fortune that drove countless souls to stake all they had for a dream half a world away. Picture the faceless masses that toiling and tormented under the banner of the cross, the monarchs, and the masses, the holy and the heinous, all swept away by the relentless currents of history. And consider with awe the lasting strength of an idea, a narrative, a myth. For in essence, that is the legacy of the Crusades, a saga inscribed in blood and stone, a moral tale murmured through the corridors of time. Let your dreams tonight be of a world where the bitter lessons of the Crusades are finally heeded, where faith serves to unite rather than divide, where conviction's courage is softened by compassion's wisdom. For if there is any redemption to be gleaned from this grim narrative, it lies in the hope that we can yet honor the sacrifices of yesteryear, while forging a future unshackled from the endless cycle of holy war and vengeance that has shadowed us for centuries. In the tapestry of dreams, perhaps those valiant yet weary souls from the Crusades might finally discover the elusive peace that evaded them in the harsh light of day. 02-40, enter the Mamluks, a breed of warriors forged in the crucible of relentless training and childhood indoctrination. Hailing from the vast, unforgiving steppes of Eurasia, these former slaves ascended to rural Egypt, their prowess as cavalrymen and their zealous adherence to Islam and the unmatched. 203-01. Under the visionary leadership of Sultan Baybars in the twilight of the 13th century, the Mamluks rose as an indomitable force in the Middle Eastern theater. Baybars, a master tactician, understood the vulnerabilities of the Crusader states with a clarity that bordered on prophetic. He recognized their overstretched lines, their forces sapped by the ceaseless skirmishes of years past. Without hesitation, he capitalized on this weakness. 03-29. In a stroke of genius in 1268, Baybars seized Antioch, a city pivotal to Crusader strategy. This was no mere victory, it was a cataclysmic event that reverberated through Christendom. The fall of Antioch, once a beacon of Crusader strength, now stood as a somber omen for the fate of other coastal fortresses. The Mamluk juggernaut was unstoppable. 203-49. Baybars, alongside his successors, methodically dismantled the Crusader defenses, employing sophisticated siege machinery and psychological tactics that sapped the will of their adversaries. The Mamluks excelled in mounted archery, their arrows finding their marks with lethal precision, even as they charged at full gallop. 04-10. Can you envision the dread that gripped the Crusader infantry as a thunderous cavalry onslaught approached the sky itself, seeming to rain arrows? Despite their desperate calls for aid from Europe, the beleaguered Crusaders found no relief. The golden age of the Grand Crusades had waned. The fervor and faith that once fueled these epic campaigns had cooled to embers. 35. Meanwhile, the rulers of Europe, entangled in their own political machinations and conflicts, turned a deaf ear to the cries of their brethren in the East. Amidst their own internal conflicts and dynastic quarrels, the Crusader states found themselves unable, or perhaps unwilling, to muster a robust defense against the relentless Mamluk advance. Consequently, these once mighty realms crumbled, their fortresses breached, their vibrant cities laid waste by the sword. A Venetian pilgrim, wandering through the desolate remnants of Acre several years after its tragic fall in 1291, penned a heart-wrenching account. The walls were toppled, churches reduced to rubble, homes charred to cinders, and the populace slain. Indeed, he lamented, not one stone was left upon another that had not been cast down. His words carried the weight of sorrow as he confessed, I could barely hold back my tears. Truly I wept bitterly, as did all the Christians beside me. Together they mourned, pondering in disbelief. How could so formidable a city, so well equipped, so richly provisioned, so amply manned, fall so swiftly? This somber scene marked the poignant end to nearly 2 centuries of Crusader dominion in the Levant. The grand fortresses and majestic cathedrals, once symbols of their might, now lay in ruins, silent testaments to the ultimate futility of their grand endeavor. Countless lives were sacrificed, vast treasures expended, in a conflict that had ignited with such fervor but extinguished in profound defeat. The fall of Acre was not merely the dusk of the Crusader era, it was a twilight that cast long shadows over history. Its legacy, intricate and enduring, persisted long after the last Latin banners vanished over the horizon. The Crusades imprinted an indelible mark on the medieval tapestry, influencing everything from art and architecture to the very fabric of politics and commerce. They thrust the peoples of Europe into a direct, often tumultuous dialogue with the refined civilizations of the Near East, igniting a cultural exchange that would sow seeds for the Renaissance. Yet this legacy was not without its shadows. The Crusades fostered a heritage of religious zealotry, xenophobia, and a mistrust between Christians and Muslims, a legacy that, to our sorrow, still reverberates in our modern world. The scars of this epic, deep and enduring, remind us of the complex interplay between ambition, faith, and the human cost of conflict. Oh, the echoes of the Crusades. They reverberate through the Middle East, casting long shadows that shape the geopolitical dance of today. From the vantage of time looking back, one cannot help but feel a shiver at the profound misery and agony these holy wars inflicted upon humanity. Whether you were a knight, your armor clanking in the cold, damp confines of a castle tower, a Mamluk warrior far from the comforting expanse of your homeland's steppes, or merely a peasant caught unwittingly in the crosshairs of divine conflict existence, during those times was indeed harsh, brutal, and fleeting. Yet amidst the chaos and the cries of war, there shine moments of humanity's enduring light, tales of chivalry and honor, of cultural exchanges where enemies found mutual respect, and of simple, heartfelt kindnesses that defy the surrounding cruelty. These stories, these glimmers, they whisper to us that even in the darkest corridors of history, the human spirit remains unbroken, resilient. Perhaps then the Crusades leave us not just with scars, but with profound lessons, a stark warning of religious extremism's perils, the emptiness of holy wars, and the urgent call for understanding and tolerance across the divides of faith and culture. In our world, so often fractured and in turmoil, these lessons burn with a renewed urgency. So as we turn the final pages on this chapter soaked in blood and significance, let us ponder deeply on the truths it teaches. Let us endeavor to forge connections where once there were only divides, to seek common ground rather than fields of battle. And let us hold in our hearts the memory of those ordinary souls from all sides who bore the brunt of the Crusades' wrath, whose simple dreams were to live free from the looming shadow of war. As the curtain falls on this era, may their stories inspire us to strive for peace and understanding, for in their struggles we find a reflection of our own shared humanity. As the sun set on Acre in 1291, the medieval tapestry was irrevocably altered, its threads woven through with the blood and fervor of centuries of conflict in the Holy Land. The Crusades, those tumultuous expeditions, have left an indelible imprint on the chronicle of time, sculpting the destinies of empires, faiths, and civilizations for ages to come. What a legacy they have bequeathed, a tapestry of complexity and controversy. Consider the fervor that ignited these holy wars. On one side, they were a colossal gathering of humanity fueled by a zealous religious fire and an ardent wish to restore the sacred Christian shrines. The Crusaders, a mosaic of humanity, came from every corner of Europe, spanning the gamut of social strata. Were they not driven by a sincere conviction in their divine mission? Yet amidst this piety, ambition also thrived. For some, the Crusades were less about salvation and more about seeking adventure, glory, or simply the lure of profit. But oh, the dark shadow they cast upon history. The atrocities committed against the Muslim and Jewish inhabitants of the Holy Land were so heinous that they shocked even that age of iron picture Jerusalem. During the First Crusade, the streets ran red with the blood of innocent civilians, a macabre river through the city of peace. And this was no isolated horror. Similar nightmares unfolded in other captured cities, sowing seeds of hatred and mistrust that would germinate for centuries. The Crusades, however, did not merely alter the spiritual landscape. They shifted the geopolitical chessboard of the medieval world. The Byzantine Empire, once the stalwart guardian of Eastern Christianity, was left reeling from the sack of Constantinople in 1204 during the Fourth Crusade. This event not only weakened the empire, but set the stage for its ultimate demise and the ascendancy of the Ottoman Turks, who would soon stretch their dominion across the Middle East and Eastern Europe. What a profound reshaping of power and culture. How could the world not be forever changed by such epic upheavals? In the West, the Crusades not only solidified the Catholic Church's stronghold, but also magnified the prestige and influence of the papacy. Popes, with their fervent calls to arms, became the master orchestrators of these divine expeditions, their voices echoing through the hearts of thousands, galvanizing them into action. Their power, once a quiet whisper in the corridors of Rome, now boomed with authority across Christendom. The Crusades were more than just battles. They were a cultural juggernaut sweeping through Europe with exotic goods, novel technologies, and fresh ideas from the East. Imagine the wonder, the sheer exhilaration of Europeans as they encountered spices, silks, and stories that whispered of distant mystical lands. These encounters not only enriched their lives, but also transformed their very essence, embedding tales of chivalric valor and noble quests into the fabric of society. Yet despite the heroism that shimmered in the annals of these times, the Crusades fell short of their sacred goal. The Holy Land, the very heart of Christian yearning, remained elusive, slipping through the fingers of even the most valiant crusaders. The fall of Acre in 1291 was not just a military defeat. It was the death knell for the dream of a Christian-ruled Jerusalem. Why did we fail? One might ask, looking back at the countless sacrifices made in the name of faith. The aftermath of these holy wars was a tapestry of shadows, weaving a legacy of mistrust and animosity between Christians and Muslims that continues to haunt us. Yet let us not forget, the Crusades are a testament to the intricate dance of religious fervor, political ambition, and cultural exchange. They remind us of the indomitable spirit of humanity, where faith and ideology can propel individuals to acts of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. Reflecting on this, let us ponder the words of Saladin, the revered Muslim leader, who in his relentless pursuit recaptured Jerusalem in 1187. When faced with the question of his fierce determination, his response was not of hatred or vengeance, but a poignant reflection on the sanctity of his cause and the duty to protect his people's heritage. Imagine the echo of the stern warning. Beware the shedding of blood, the indulgence in it, the habit-forming nature of it, for blood never rest. 2013, Shiro. This stark admonition serves as a heart-rending testament to the Crusades' brutal impact on humanity, a stark reminder of the bloodshed and the unyielding legacy of strife it left in its wake. Yet within this somber reflection lies a clarion call to seek understanding, to embrace reconciliation, and to learn from the past grievous errors, yearning for a future where peace and harmony reign supreme among all peoples. 2013 to 22. As we draw the curtains on our exploration of the Crusades, let us pause, reflect on this tumultuous chapter of history. Consider the valor and steadfast belief of those who perished in battle on both sides of the divide, and ponder the intricate weave of faith, politics, and culture that not only defined their era, but continues to influence ours. June 13, 47. Have you felt the pulse of history quicken as we journeyed through these medieval sagas? If so, I implore you to engage further with this channel, where each video is a portal to another epoch, another lesson from our collective past. There are myriad tales yet to be unearthed, each a testament to the victories and defeats, the luminaries, and the dark figures that have sculpted the path of human civilization. 2014-09. But for now, let us cherish the profound ability of history to light our way forward. Let us stand in awe of the human spirit's resilience, its capacity for innovation even amidst the deepest despair and pain, and let this inspire us to forge a world marked by deeper understanding, boundless compassion, and enduring peace. 2014-32. As the sun dips below the horizon, ushering in the tranquil embrace of night, we find ourselves at the culmination of our journey together. Oh, what a journey it has been. Have our tales stirred your heart? Have they painted vivid pictures in the canvas of your mind? Thank you, dear viewers, for accompanying us through each twist and turn, every heartfelt moment, and emotional crescendo. Your presence has been our beacon of light. Please do not hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments. Share this emotional voyage with others. And if you felt the warmth of our narratives, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Together, let us keep the stories alive, for they are the essence of our shared human experience. Good night, and may your dreams be as enchanting as the tales we've told.